Chapter 707. They kept drinking, and the atmosphere was not harmonious. Since Qinetian joined them, Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin tried their best to maintain a happy and peaceful space, but they failed because of Fang Yan's uncooperation and Qinetian's queen nature. Fang Yan was silent because he hadn't come out from what Qinetian said in front of everyone just now. He knew very well what it meant for a girl to say those words and do such a thing. And when that girl was Qinetian, it was even more difficult. How could a family like the Qin family allow a girl to say such words of love even if she was scolded as a mistress? For them, it was a disgrace to the family's reputation. How could Fang Yan enjoy the beauty's kindness? Was it the best way to repay the kindness by being a playboy with two beauties on both sides? Moreover, Yiro and Qinetian were both very unique. One was as hot as fire, and the other was as cold as ice. If they collided with each other, it would be like Mars colliding with Earth. Qinetian had been talking all the time. She not only answered Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin's questions, but also took the initiative to find some common topics. However, it was very strange that Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin just couldn't be intimate with her. They talked more and more, but the relationship between them didn't get closer, and the atmosphere didn't get warmer. Instead, it became a little awkward. Once everyone stopped talking, it was really difficult for someone to say something. Thus, everyone could only drink one glass after another. There was another pianist playing on the stage. Of course, there was no way to compare with Li Junling's foundation, but he who had the opportunity to go on the stage was not bad. What he played was Starry Sky. The vast night sky was presented to everyone by him. Everyone was like an astronaut traveling in space. It had to be said that music was really magical. Although Li Junling had left, he ordered the waiter to send 2 bottles of fire snake. The 2 bottles of flame snake were quickly emptied. Although Jiang Qin was reluctant, he still said with a smile, "Mr. Fang, have you been in Yanjing recently?" "He should be in Yanjing these few days," Fang Yan said. He still had a lot of things to take care of, so he couldn't leave for a while. "If Mr. Fang is in Yanjing, let's find another time to meet." Jiang Qin said, "It's too late today. Yuan Lin and I have to go back to rest. We have to attend an activity early tomorrow morning." Fang Yan nodded and said, "You two go back and rest. Let's get together again when we have time." Yuan Lin was a little drunk. She stood up and walked to Fang Yan, saying, "Mr. Fang, Yuan Lin, are you all right?" "I'm fine." Yuan Lin's body shook and she said, "Mr. Fang, we are no longer children. Don't treat us as children anymore." Yuan Lin still wanted to say something, but she was pulled away by Jiang Qin. Fang Yan asked if he needed to send them back. Jiang Qin said that the driver and the assistant were waiting outside, and someone would send them home. After the 2 girls left, there were only Fang Yan and Qinetian in the box. Fang Yan opened a bottle of mineral water and handed it to Qinetian, saying, "Drink some water." Qinetian accepted the bottle of water and took small sips. She lay on the sofa, her starry eyes staring unblinkingly at Fang Yan. There was a look of joy on her face, as if they had just met for the first time. Her posture was so lazy that she looked like a lazy cat. Fang Yan opened the bottle of mineral water and gulped it down. After drinking all night, he was really thirsty. After drinking a bottle of water, when Fang Yan turned around, he found that Qinetian was still looking at him with the same posture and the same smile. Fang Yan sighed softly and said with blame, "You shouldn't have said those words. You are such a smart person. Why didn't you think of the consequences?" "Then what should I have said?" Qinetian asked in reply, still smiling. "Say that I have nothing to do with Mr. Fang. I don't like him at all. Say that we are not lovers now, and we will not be lovers in the future." "You," Qinetian waved his hand and said, I know. You want to say that you are moved, but you can't accept me because you already have Iro. You already have a girlfriend. I know that even if you don't say it. I am such a smart person. How can I think of what you want to say? I am afraid of bringing you trouble, Fang Yan said. Qin Tian sat up straight and looked at Fang Yan, saying, if there is no such trouble, there will be that kind of trouble. Because I am a woman. Who asked me to be such an outstanding woman? They want to drive me out and trample on me. I don't want to do what they want, but I don't want to let them succeed. In this way, there will always be contradictions, won't there? You want to use a woman's feelings as a point of attack to drag me down. Don't you feel ashamed? If the men of the Qin family are only so capable, I really can't hand over the things in my hands so easily. If they can't protect it, I will protect it. Qin Tian held his chin with one hand and looked at Fang Yan seriously, saying, do you remember what I said to you before? What? Fang Yan asked. Qin Tian had said countless words to him, but he really didn't know which one he was asking. I will be very angry when I see someone bullying you. If anyone hurts you, I will skin him, no matter who he is. Qin Tian stood up straight and went forward to hold Fang Yan's head, letting him lean on his lower abdomen, and said, I don't want the wind to hurt your eyes. I don't want the snow to fall on your shoulders. I don't want anyone to touch a hair on you. No one. I am Qin Tian. If someone bullies me, countless people will stand up to protect me. But, what about you? If someone bullies you, then let me stand up to protect you. I know you are very tired, and I know you don't like these plots and schemes. If you want, let me shelter you from the wind and rain. You are too tired. Have a good sleep. Fang Yan smiled bitterly, and then there was a scalding warmth flowing through his body. He only thought that it was a child's joke from several years ago. He didn't expect that she would remember the words of that snow, including every punctuation. Qin Tian's lower abdomen was very soft, but it also gave people a sense of security. Fang Yan, who alone supported the Fang clan and struggled with all kinds of forces, couldn't refuse this kind of protection, and couldn't refuse this kind of gentleness. He was really tired, very, very tired. Fang Yan closed his eyes and quickly fell asleep. The Qin clan's old residence wasn't old at all. Instead, it was on the most beautiful mountain in Yanjing City, Fragrant Mountain. They bought land and built a mansion that covered dozens of acres. The house was European style, like an ancient castle in Europe. The vegetation was dense, and there were all kinds of rare flowers and plants. The lawn was wide, and every day, the young people of the Qin clan were responsible for cutting the grass. Even Qin Tian, a busy person, was no exception. When it was her turn to cut the grass, no matter how busy she was, she had to go home to do this voluntary work. There was a golf course inside the Qin clan, which was connected to the inner stream of Fragrant Mountain. If you played golf in autumn, the mountains and fields would be covered with red maple leaves. It was secondary to play hard and enjoy the beautiful scenery of Fragrant Mountain and the Qin clan's self-brewed white wine. The Qin clan paid attention to being open and aboveboard, and there was nothing that they couldn't tell others. Therefore, their family style was to make money generously and spend generously. They didn't hide their wealth in the deep mountains, nor did they live in a small shabby house to show off. They liked to enjoy themselves, and they also had the courage to show everything they had in front of others. They weren't afraid of jealousy, and they had the ability to resist all opponents. Their way of doing things was very popular, and even some influential people in Yanjing would come over to drink tea and play a few rounds of golf with the Qin clan's old master when they had nothing to do. The Qin clan in Yanjing was also an ancient family that had been standing for thousands of years. It was said that they were the descendants of a general surnamed Qin in the Qin dynasty. However, their history was too long, and they had been passed down for countless generations. Except for the Qin clan's own people, it was difficult for outsiders to say for sure. Because of the need to cut the grass, Chinitian often went back to the old house. However, today, he was called back by his grandfather. His grandfather's attitude when he called was very kind. He said with a smile, "My dear granddaughter, Grandpa wants to drink tea. Come back and make a cup of tea for Grandpa." Therefore, Chinitian came back to make tea. Chinitian was indeed making tea. In her Grandpa Chin Dongyang's luxurious tea room, Chinitian sat in front of the tea table in her snow-white robe. She warmed the teapot, prepared the tea, brewed the tea, poured the tea, and served the tea. Her robe was wide and her movements were smooth. Several old people held the teacups and drank tea. Qin Lingnan, the second uncle of the great-grandpa's family, stood beside them. He looked down and pretended that he was invisible. Before Chinitian came back, he had said all that he needed to say and done all that he needed to do. As for how to decide, it was up to these old people. Qin Chang stood outside the tea room. He was not qualified to sit here and drink tea with the old people around the tea table. With a gentle smile on his face, he seemed to enjoy such a family gathering. After Chinitian distributed the tea to the 3 grandfathers and 2 sisters, he knelt there and poured a cup of tea for himself. He tasted the tea and found that it tasted good. It was his usual level. However, the water used was fragrant mountain spring water that had been stored for a day. When he drank it, there was a rusty smell. If it was freshly fished, the taste would be sweeter and more delicious. Chinitian's grandfather, Qin Dongyang, closed his eyes and took a sip, letting the warm tea flow down his throat and into his lungs. His lips and teeth were filled with the tea perfume and sweetness of the water. He asked, "How is it?" "Good tea." Qin Shouwen was the first to respond. "The water is good, the tea is good, and the tea maker is even better," said Qin Yunlan, the eldest of the siblings. "Etienne's tea-making skills are getting better and better. We just need to drink it. Why do we need to taste it? What do we need to judge?" Qin Shifeng looked a little impatient. Qin Dongyang nodded and looked at his granddaughter sitting opposite him. He said with a smile, "Etienne, you've drunk the tea. Go back and rest." Qin Etienne stood up, bowed slightly to the old people, and then turned to leave. From beginning to end, she didn't look at Qin Lingnan and Qin Chang. Chapter 708. Since the tea master had left, the people drinking tea should have left as well. However, other than Chinitian, no one else in the tea room had left. Qin Dongyang held the teacup and said with a smile, "This tea is still edible, which proves that Etienne has put in a lot of effort all these years. I also tried to persuade her. She's a girl, why waste her time on these trivial things all day? Girls at her age should be studying, shopping, and dating. She should have fun for a few years, and her youth will be gone forever. When she's at our age, she'll be a joke if she studies and dates again. Etienne is stubborn and doesn't listen." Qin Yunlan glanced at Qin Lingnan and said in a displeased tone, "Although Etienne is a girl, she's a great talent in our Qin family. What's wrong with a girl doing these things? Why can't some people like her? It's not like we don't give you a chance. Doesn't the Qin family have a startup fund? As long as you have a project, as long as you have creativity, everyone has a chance to prove their ability. People who are always jealous of other people's achievements but are unwilling to work hard themselves are always thinking of ways to drag others down and drag those who are ahead of them down to their level. Such people are wicked. Everyone wants to do this. Is the Qin family still the Qin family? Can the Qin family still be where it is today? It would have been swallowed by others long ago. Perhaps it was because they were both women, but Qin Yunlan was especially fond of her granddaughter. She raised her voice and said, "I'm going to say this first. I don't care about fair competition, and I don't care about it. On the contrary, I'm happy to see it happen. However, If someone wants to harm Etienne and uses some underhanded means, I won't forgive him if I find out. The others lowered their heads and drank their tea. They had no intention of standing up to take sides. They all knew that this involved the power struggle between the eldest and second families. It was actually a struggle to give the economic power of the Qin family to the man or the woman. Some people supported taking back the power and handing it to the outstanding second generation. After all, it wasn't the same thing to let a woman with another surname control the Qin family's economic power. Some people supported Qin Shouwen's faction, but now that Qin Dongyang's faction clearly had the upper hand, it was not convenient for them to support him at this time. Everyone had their own thoughts, so no one spoke again. It was so quiet in the tea room that one could hear a pin drop. After a long while, Qin Shouwen put down the teacup in his hand and praised, "That girl Etienne is really good at making good tea. It looks pleasing to the eye and leaves a pleasant fragrance in the mouth. It's just that Dongyang is too stingy. Etienne's granddaughter only made 1 cup of tea for us before he hurriedly chased us away. Otherwise, I would have liked to drink a few more cups. However, Etienne's tea ceremony skills are far inferior to our children." By saying so, Qin Shouwen had already admitted his mistake to Qin Dongyang. With a gentle smile on his face, Qin Dongyang looked at his elder brother and said, "Everyone has their own specialties. He writes Qin opera well and is proficient in music. Even his fiancée is a piano master. In this area, the heavenly sword cannot compare." Qin Shouwen laughed and waved his hand. "I've discovered that there is nothing in this world that Qin Etienne cannot do, as long as she is willing to learn." Everyone roared with laughter. Qin Shouwen stood up and said, "I'm tired. Let's go. Whose turn will it be to weed tomorrow? Qin Chong doesn't have anything to do tomorrow, so he can do it for her. He's too young. We need to let him exercise more. It's Qin Hongying." Qin Shifeng said, "That girl likes to sleep late. If she knows that someone is helping her weed, she will be very happy." Qin Chong walked over and said to the old man, "Third grandpa, please tell Sister Hongying that I will help her weed early tomorrow morning. Let her have a good rest." "Yes." Qin Shifeng looked at Qin Chong thoughtfully and said, "Men should be open-minded. The more open-minded they are, the bigger their heart will be. With a big heart, the wider the world you see will be. Only then can you achieve extraordinary things." Qin Chong bowed deeply and said, "Thank you for your guidance, third grandpa. I know I was wrong." Qin Shifeng grinned and pointed at Qin Chong. "This kid is quite sly. He is quite active in admitting his mistakes." Everyone laughed again, and the tea party ended. Qin Shouwen returned to his room. His son, Qin Lingling, and grandson, Qin Chong, followed him in. Qin Shouwen sat on a chair while Qin Chong hurried to pour tea and get snacks for his grandfather. Qin Shouwen took the teacup that Qin Chong handed over. He didn't take a sip. Instead, he looked at Qin Chong and said, "Do you know why I didn't reprimand you just now?" "Because Grandpa was protecting my pride," Qin Chong said with a face full of guilt. "Bullshit." Qin Shouwen squeezed out a very unrefined word from the corner of his mouth. "Protect your pride? What pride do you have that's worth me protecting? I just feel too embarrassed and can't stand up and say it. Isn't that embarrassing? Qin Chong, aren't you ashamed?" Qin Chong's face turned red. He was so embarrassed by his grandfather's mockery that he couldn't speak. "I know that you men want to fight for power and snatch a piece of the cake. Fight, snatch, I'm happy, I'm happy. What kind of man are you if you don't wield power and play with women? It's not just me. Do the others not have the same thoughts? Why does our Qin family's business need a woman with another surname to control it? Are the men of our Qin family sh*t? Are none of the men of our Qin family presentable? But, can you not be so shabby in what you're doing? Can you not say that? How can that word be used? Yes, loser. Do you know how loser your way of doing things is? Using a woman's reputation to say something. Whether it's true or not, you've already lost. You've lost so badly that you've even lost your underwear. You've done such a thing? How can other people support you? Who has the nerve to stand up and say that what you've done is right? We're all so old. Are we going to point at a teenage girl and say that she's a mistress and has no shame? How can we say such things? If we were to follow you and get involved in this kind of thing, wouldn't we be disrespecting our elders? Grandpa, I know I'm wrong. Qin Chang wanted to find a hole to hide in. But we didn't let that thing out. No matter who let it out, it doesn't matter. Qin Shouweng said resentfully, someone set the bait to see who the stupid fish was. In the end, my son and grandson became the two most stupid fish. Thinking of this, my old face is burning with pain. I didn't get laughed at by them, but by the two of you. Qin Lingling stood at the side, feeling too ashamed to show his face. Although his father didn't scold him by name, most of the blame fell on his son. However, he was already so old, yet he followed his son to do such a thing. It was really stupid. After talking for a long time, Qin Chang finally raised his teacup and took a big sip of fragrant tea. He waved his hand and said, "Go. You two can go back. It's late, so have a good rest. Qin Chang, get up early tomorrow. Remember to eradicate the weeds in the garden. I should also give you a little punishment so that you'll remember this forever. Sometimes, the more fragrant the bait is, the bigger the trap." Qin Chang nodded and said, "Grandpa, I'll remember what happened today." Qin Lingling also said, "Dad, you should rest early. Go back, all of you." The old man waved his hand and said. When Qin Etienne returned to his room, the light in the room was on. An elegant and gentle woman in a purple nightgown was sitting in front of the floor-to-ceiling window reading a book. It was a book Qin Etienne was reading, titled The Little Prince. She had read it several times before. Because she liked the story inside, she would review it when she had nothing to do. Qin Etienne walked to the woman and sat down. He asked with a smile, "How many times is this?" "The fourth time," the woman said. "I've read it for the fifth time," Qin Etienne said proudly. "But I haven't finished reading it for the fifth time. I've been too busy recently." The woman closed the book in her hand, looked at her daughter and said, "Have you finished the tea?" "Yes." Qin Etienne nodded and took The Little Prince from his mother's hand. He took a bookmark and put it where his mother had just read it. He said, "The ending has been predestined. It's just a formality." The woman nodded and said, "You won, and Qin Chang didn't lose." "I know." Qin Etienne nodded and said, "After what happened to Junwei and the judgment of the elders tonight, I'm afraid my brothers in the family hate me even more, right? Who asked me to be a woman? A woman should be a good wife and have more children. Why should I be in charge of the family business? You've done all the things that men should do. What do you want them to do? Do you know why I hold on to the power in my hands?" The woman asked. "I don't know." Qin Etienne shook his head. "You've never told me either. But I know you're not a person who is greedy for power. The more they want it, the more I won't give it to them," the woman said. "I just want to tell them that you can't compete with me." Qin Etienne was stunned for a moment, then giggled and said, "I like this reason." The woman reached out and stroked her daughter's silky hair. She sighed softly and said, "It's just that releasing such news will eventually damage your reputation." Qin Etienne smiled and said, "If you don't release it, others will release it. It's like a bomb. If we detonate it ourselves, the initiative is still in our hands. If we let them detonate it, it's hard to say what the result will be. Besides, even my mother helped me steal a man. How can I not win?" Chapter 709. After Fang Yan took a taxi to the address on the information, Zhang Jianjun's secretary had been waiting at the intersection for a long time. Seeing the taxi stop, Li Mingyun quickly walked over to help open the rear door. He used his hand to protect Fang Yan's head from hitting it and said respectfully, "Mr. Fang, it's not convenient for the boss to come out. He's waiting for you in the private room." Zhang Jianjun was the secretary of the chief and a close minister of the emperor. In such a sensitive and critical position, there were countless people who wanted to be on good terms with him every day. If he stood on the side of the road to welcome guests, the people behind him could probably line up to the west gate of Xuanwu Gate. Of course, it was also possible that Zhang Jianjun felt that Fang Yan was not worthy of him coming out to welcome him personally. Fang Yan stepped out and shook hands with Li Mingyun. He said with a smile, "We Jianghu people don't care about trifles. This way, please." Li Mingyun made an inviting gesture and then walked to the side to lead the way. The young man was very young, but his eyes were sharp and his hands were fast, and he did things in a measured manner. Fang Yan thought to himself, Huaxia's most outstanding talents are probably fighting in the system, right? Along the corner of the red wall, they turned left and right for a few hundred meters before stopping at the intersection of a bluestone alley. Li Mingyun walked to the door of the first Sihiyuan at the end of the alley and gently knocked on the door lock. The wooden door opened, and a beautiful woman in a palace dress bowed with a smile and said, "Your servant pays respect to the master." Li Mingyun waved his hand and said, "We Jianghu people don't care about trifles." He had learned from Fang Yan's words and used them in a practical manner. The woman wanted to lead the way in front, but Li Mingyun waved his hand and said, "I know the way." It was a traditional Sihiyuan restaurant with red walls and green tiles. It was somewhat similar to the popular private home cuisine outside. Li Mingyun pushed open the wooden door of the heavenly private room and said to Zhang Jianjun, who was sitting inside and drinking tea, "Boss, Mr. Fang is here. Can we serve the dishes?" "Wait a minute. There's still one guest who hasn't arrived," Zhang Jianjun said. As he spoke, Zhang Jianjun put down the teacup in his hand and took the initiative to shake hands with Fang Yan. "All the people here are familiar with each other. Once we go out, we'll be chatting non-stop, so we might as well hide here and enjoy some peace and quiet. Brother Fang Yan, don't take it to heart. We still have a long way to go." Zhang Jianjun shook hands with a lot of force. It was obvious that he was a soldier. "Brother Jianjun is too polite," Fang Yan said with a smile. Zhang Jianjun made an inviting gesture and said, "Let's have some tea first. A good brother is coming over." Fang Yan was curious about what kind of person Zhang Jianjun had to personally wait for, but he didn't ask this question. He looked at the antique decorations in the private room and said with a smile, "This is a good place. Ordinary people really can't find it." Zhang Jianjun said with a smile, "It's just a group of people who think they're so awesome showing off here. Usually, this place is not open to the public. They need to be introduced by acquaintances. Nowadays, in order to satisfy the selfish desires of some people, they can really come up with all kinds of ideas. It's normal for businessmen to pursue profits." Fang Yan said with a smile. "Everyone has their own selfish desires. With selfishness and selfish desires, there will be people who will stand up to satisfy the selfishness and selfish desires of some people. As long as it's not against the law, it can't be said to be wrong. It's just that everyone wants to be a part of the people who are served. Everyone works so hard to live, seizing every seemingly insignificant opportunity and refusing to let go. Isn't it for this goal?" Zhang Jianjun looked at Fang Yan thoughtfully and said, "To be honest, you're younger than I thought." Fang Yan squinted his eyes and smiled. He asked, "How old do you think I should be?" Zhang Jianjun didn't answer Fang Yan's question. Instead, he held the teacup and said calmly, "We used to have a gathering here often, but at that time, the person who came was by Xiu. Bai Xiu took a leave of absence, so I took his place for a few days. The smile on Fang Yan's face became even more radiant. He looked as if he didn't have any ulterior motives. I know what kind of place Swallow Dock is, and I also know how much the chief values Swallow Dock. When I saw Bai Xiu, I thought he was the future of Swallow Dock. But I didn't expect that the person I took for granted as the future would never come again. Brother Jianjun, are you sad? Just a little sentimental. Zhang Jianjun said, the people who used to drink and chat at the same table are gone. I have to say that life is fickle. Fang Yan smiled and said, yes, life is fickle. So I feel that people should maintain their own hearts. If they don't do things that they feel guilty about, they won't be afraid of ghosts knocking on the door. What do you mean by feeling guilty? What do you mean by not feeling guilty? Zhang Jianjun smiled and said, most of the time, people are just doing things for the cup of tea in their hands, the bowl of food on the table, and the position of the chair under their buttocks. Whether it's for a cup of tea or a bowl of food, or perhaps for the position of the chair under their buttocks, we need to walk the right path and do good deeds. Why do farmers sleep so soundly at night? It's because every meal they eat is earned by their own hard work. They put in hard work and sweat. They have no fear or guilt in their hearts. According to health science, people will naturally live longer if they have fewer distracting thoughts. Zhang Jianjun nodded with a smile and said, so, they have always been farmers? Farmers have their own ways of giving, businessmen have their own ways of giving, and officials are the same. They are flexible but they don't violate the rules. They are flexible but they don't step on the line. This is how a successful politician should be, right? What if someone steps on the line? A gentleman does not stand under a wall. Fang Yan said, for those who abide by the rules, those people are walls that can be pushed down at any time. Zhang Jianjun sighed softly and looked at Fang Yan and said, it's really not easy to be able to keep one's heart at such a young age. I study Tai Chi. The most basic condition of Tai Chi is to have Chi in one's heart. What kind of Chi is that? It's the Chi of righteousness, the Chi of atmosphere, the Chi of mountains and rivers, the Chi of the sun, moon, and stars. How can a person who walks in the dark all day see the Chi of righteousness, the Chi of mountains and rivers, the Chi of the sun, moon, and stars? Zhang Jianjun was silent for a long time and said, no wonder the chief thinks so highly of you. You should be an official. Fang Yan shook his head and said, any field needs a good person like me who has principles and limits. Zhang Jianjun was stunned for a moment and then burst out laughing. Fang Yan also smiled. As he smiled, his gaze became piercingly cold. There was a murderous aura. This murderous aura was not emitted by Zhang Jianjun, who was beside him, but from outside the door. The murderous aura penetrated the wall and hit the face, which proved that this person was extremely powerful. However, such a powerful person could control his murderous aura, but he didn't hide it, which proved that the other party just wanted to put some pressure on him and didn't mean to hurt him. The guest is here, Fang Yan said. Really? Zhang Jianjun turned around but didn't see the guest. A few seconds later, the door of the room was pushed open, and a young man in black appeared at the door of the room. Before the man entered the room, there was a fierce aura attacking the people in the room. His eyes directly ignored Zhang Jianjun, the host, and swept over to Fang Yan. The two people looked at each other, and it felt like an ice knife against a frost sword. The man refused to dodge, and Fang Yan couldn't retreat. It was just a staring contest. He had practiced it when he was a child. He didn't believe that he couldn't exhaust him to death. Zhang Jianjun originally wanted to stand up and make an introduction. When he got up, he found that the situation between the two people was not right, so he sat back with a smile on his face. He wanted to see how these two people would end up. 30 seconds, 50 seconds, 1 minute. Li Mingyun appeared at the door again. Looking at the man blocking the door, she said, "Mr. Gongsun, why don't you go in and have some tea?" The man in black broke his disguise and glanced at Li Mingyun with dissatisfaction. He lifted his feet and walked into the private room. Zhang Jianjun got up, looked at the man in black and said, "Gongsun, I've been waiting for you." He pointed at Fang Yen who was drinking tea and said, "This is Fang Yen from Swallow Dock. You should get to know each other better in the future." Then he pointed at the man in black and said to Fang Yen, "Gongsun Qi, the disciple of the Divine Dragon. People call him Little Divine Dragon." Fang Yan's expression froze, and the way he looked at Gongsun Qi was filled with killing intent. This was the disciple of the Divine Dragon, Gongsun Qi. He knew that the Divine Dragon had entered the Red Wall a few years ago, becoming a consecrator of the Xian division that was responsible for the safety of the country's leader. It was said that there were several heavenly Dao realm experts in the Xian division, and the weaker ones could reach the quasi-heaven Dao realm. Although one would lose some freedom when trapped in the Red Wall, there were countless treasures in the Red Wall. Any request could be satisfied. At their level, not only did they need to rely on self-cultivation, they also needed to rely on herbs and Dharma artifacts to cultivate. Just like how some Western magicians needed large family clans to provide them with countless magic crystals, these cultivators also needed all sorts of herbs to nourish their bodies. They needed all sorts of rare beasts and stones to improve themselves. Who could be wealthier than the country, their financial backer? Gongsun Qi pricked up his brows and stared coldly at Fang Yen. He said, "You want to kill me?" How could Gongsun Qi not see the saber flash in Fang Yan's eyes? How can that be? Fang Yen chuckled and waved his hand, looking like a good person. He looked seriously at Gongsun Qi and said, "I want to kill your master." Chapter 710. I want to kill your master. These were Fang Yan's heartfelt words. Why did he have such a strong desire? Because he subconsciously thought that the Fang family's current situation was directly related to the old drunkard Mo Qingdi's meridians being broken by the dragon god. It could also be said that it was the fuse. If the old drunkard was still Mo Qingdi, who would dare to bully the Fang family? If the old drunkard was still Mo Qingdi, who would dare to kill Fang Yixing and destroy Fang Yan's family? If the old drunkard was still Mo Qingdi, Fang Yan's life would not be so difficult and dangerous now, right? It was like a common scene in TV dramas. The male protagonist was originally from a wealthy family, but his father, the head of the family, was killed by someone. From then on, the family's financial situation plummeted, and he was bullied and looked down upon. The male protagonist's anger soared, and he began to work hard to avenge his father. Fang Yen was the male protagonist in another melodramatic drama. There was someone who could behead someone from 1,000 miles away, and someone who wanted to kill his master while chatting. Zhang Jianjun and Gongsun Qi's expressions changed when they heard Fang Yan's words. Zhang Jianjun looked at Fang Yen with a serious expression and said, "Fang Yen, be careful with what you say. Senior Dragon God is a national treasure, you must not attack him with words." Fang Yen said with a smile, "He is a national treasure, so I can't even scold him now." Back then, Mo Qingdi was also a national treasure, right? Even the chief took special care of him at that time, right? And the result? Didn't he still get his meridians broken? One can only hear the new laugh, who can hear the old cry? Is this the country's attitude towards the old who served the country? Zhang Jianjun shook his head and said, "The situation is different. They were a fair challenge at that time. I didn't say it was an unfair challenge." Fang Yen said seriously. "When I challenge the dragon god, I hope Brother Jianjun can be our witness." Martial artists valued the relationship between their masters the most. A master was like a father, and Gongsun Qi was no exception. Hearing Fang Yen say that he wanted to kill his master, Gongsun Qi sneered and said, "You're looking at the sky from the bottom of a well, how ridiculous. You can forget about defeating me, yet you still want to challenge my master? I'm afraid you won't be able to withstand the might of my master's sword, right? I know why you hate my master so much. It's because he injured your senior brother. Don't underestimate him. Back then, Mo Qingdi was invincible when he was at his peak, but he was still defeated by Master's rabbit-head sword, not to mention the immature you. Alright, alright. Zhang Jianjun waved his hand and said, don't start a war of words as soon as you meet. Take your seats. We still have business to discuss. Fang Yan's expression changed very quickly as he said with a smile, a guest follows the host's wishes. I'll listen to Big Brother Jianjun's arrangement. Gongsun Qi had always been an iceberg. From the moment they met, he had kept a straight face, so no one knew how he was feeling now. Under Zhang Jianjun's arrangement, Fang Yan and Gongsun Qi sat on his left and right respectively. When Li Mingyun saw the guests at the table, he quickly turned around and went out to order the restaurant to serve the dishes. The dishes were all some home-cooked dishes. The ingredients were not extraordinary, but the cooking was very exquisite. Zhang Jianjun looked at Fang Yan and Gongsun Qi and said, I heard that people in Jianghu like wine. I wonder if you two are interested in drinking a few cups? Shall the three of us drink some white wine? We don't agree with each other. No wine. Gongsun Qi directly refused. Fang Yan also looked at Zhang Jianjun with a smile and said, I like wine, but it depends on who I drink with. How can there be no wine when meeting a good friend? Why don't I accompany Big Brother Jianjun for a drink or two? Zhang Jianjun nodded and said, all right. We'll drink a bottle, half a caddy each. I don't dare to drink too much. I still have to return to the chief after dinner. I understand. Fang Yan said. Gongsun Qi didn't drink, nor did he move the chopsticks in front of him. It was as if he had no appetite for the food on the table. Fang Yan and Zhang Jianjun drank 3 cups in a row, and the bottle of white wine was mostly gone. Fang Yan said with a smile, Brother Jianjun has a good capacity for liquor. After a few cups of wine, Zhang Jianjun's impression of Fang Yan improved greatly. Although he was worried about Gongsun Qi's identity as a disciple of the Divine Dragon, he felt that this guy who liked to pretend to be cool had a low EQ and looked like a fool. He said with a smile, I was in the army back then, and then I was asked to work by the chief. The chief was the commander of the Iron Will Corps, and he took down one mountain after another with his brothers. Until now, he still likes to ask some talents from the military to work by his side. He always said that the army was hard, and there were too few opportunities. Many talented young people didn't have the chance to make a name for themselves. Fang Yan raised his glass and said with respect, to the chief. To the chief. Zhang Jianjun clinked his glass with Fang Yan again. Gongsun Qi also wanted to the chief, but the two of them didn't call him at all. He was too embarrassed to go over with a teacup, so he could only suppress his dissatisfaction in his heart. After drinking a bottle of wine, Zhang Jianjun's face turned slightly red, but Fang Yan looked as if nothing had happened. Zhang Jianjun laughed and patted Fang Yan's shoulder hard, saying, I heard you chatting with the chief. You said that the children of Swallow Dock drink with a cup. At that time, I thought you were bragging, but now it seems that it's true. Fang Yan smiled modestly and said, you are really good at bragging. You can blow a cow into the air with one breath. I know that Brother Fang Yan didn't drink well today. Let's get together another day. However, there is indeed an urgent matter that requires the two of you to take action today. What is it? Fang Yan asked. Gongsun Qi also looked over curiously. Zhang Jianjun smiled and said, this matter is too confidential, and this is not the place to talk. This time, I invited you two out mainly because the chief has ordered that you two will be responsible for this mission. Let's eat and get to know each other first, so that you can cooperate tacitly when carrying out missions in the future. Fang Yan smiled bitterly and said, big brother Jianjun, haven't you investigated before? Between the two of us, I want to kill him with a palm, and he also wants to stab me with a sword. Under such circumstances, how can the two of us cooperate tacitly? Zhang Jianjun's face became serious and said, is personal hatred or national hatred greater? If you can't distinguish between personal hatred and national hatred, who do you think will be hit in the end because of internal strife? Fang Yan and Gong Sun Qi looked at each other, both of them silent. Zhang Jianjun's expression eased a little and said, you are both the most outstanding talents of the country. One is from Swallow Dock, one is from the mysterious department, one is the soul of the people, and the other is an official elite. In the future, there will be too many areas where the two of you will need to cooperate. You two must distinguish the importance. Fang Yan nodded with absolute certainty and said, Big brother Jianjun, don't worry. I will actively cooperate and try my best to complete the mission. As for whether my teammates will cheat me or not, it's hard to say. Gong Sun Qi's face was full of contempt as he sneered and said, people who speak nice words generally don't look good when they do things. Don't tell lies in front of our big brother Jianjun. There are many people in the government who speak nice words. Don't tell me they don't look good when they do things. Damn you. Gong Sun Qi suffered a big loss in words, so he wanted to draw his sword. Zhang Jianjun waved his hand and said, now you two know each other. Wait for the mission notice. Someone will contact you when the time comes. With that, Zhang Jianjun pushed the chair and got up to leave. When he walked to the door, Zhang Jianjun stopped again and turned to look at Fang Yan and Gong Sun Qi, saying, I have paid for the tea and the meal. If you two break any tables or chairs, you will have to pay for it yourself. A friendly reminder, the things inside are really not cheap. With that said, he laughed and left. Fang Yan and Gong Sun Qi sat there, staring at each other, as if they would draw their swords at any time. After a long time, Gong Sun Qi looked at Fang Yan and asked, are the things inside very expensive? They don't look cheap. Fang Yan said. Did you bring any money? No. Crash. Gong Sun Qi stood up and looked coldly at Fang Yan, saying, in that case, let's fight another day. Then it's settled. Fang Yan said. Gong Sun Qi snorted coldly and pushed the door to leave in a very free and easy manner. Fang Yan sat in the same place, thinking about his own things. Gong Sun Qi appeared, so what about his master, the divine dragon Xiao Buxiao? He broke the tendons of the old drunkard Mo Qingdi's hand, so he should be worried about the Fang family coming to seek revenge, right? Did his line of sight notice her? Also, Zhang Jianjun knew that the Fang family and the divine dragon had a grudge, but he still set up a trap to bring him and Gong Sun Qi together. What did he want to do? Was this his intention, or the intention of the old man behind him? I can't figure it out. Fang Yan drank up the last drop of wine in the cup and muttered to himself, I really can't figure it out. When Zhang Jianjun returned to the Silver Needle courtyard, the old man was sitting at the table practicing calligraphy. Zhang Jianjun eagerly ran to help the old man make a cup of tea, and then stood quietly in the distance to watch. The old man came from the army, so his calligraphy was not beautiful, and the level was not too high. But the strength was great, and the ink penetrated the back of the paper. Moreover, every horizontal and vertical stroke of his calligraphy was extremely regular, looking decent and elegant, as if it was mimeographed for students to practice calligraphy. Of course, he himself was also imitating the handwriting. Skillful and easy. These were the 4 big characters on the paper. Because of the excessive strength, at first glance, they looked like 4 big ink balls. After the old man finished writing, he carefully looked for a while, shook his head gently and said, I have always followed the principle of skillful and easy in dealing with people, but I am not skillful at all when I write. It is too shallow and frivolous, and the words are heavy. If you don't like it, I will put it away and mount it on the wall of our living room. Zhang Jianjun said with a smile. The old man threw the brush into the ink pool and said, "If you like it, take it, but don't mount it. If you do so, it is not because the calligraphy is good, but because of the identity of the writer. You must not learn this kind of vulgar and bad habit." "Yes." Zhang Jianjun promised with a smile and handed the towel to the old man to wipe his hands. While wiping his hands, the old man looked at Zhang Jianjun and asked, "Have they met?" "Yes." Zhang Jianjun nodded and said. "How is it?" "It will happen at any moment." Chapter 7:11. On the verge of exploding. The old man chewed on this comment and said, "This phrase is not as good as handling with ease." At their age, how could they learn the essence of handling with ease? Wasn't Mo Qingdi young and promising back then? At that time, you were still a correspondent. When Mo Qingdi came to see me for the first time, I asked him what his hobbies were. He said drinking and writing. Kung Fu was only ranked third. I told him that I couldn't compete with him in drinking, and it was even more impossible for me to compete with him in Kung Fu. In the end, he wrote handling with ease for me. Do you still remember his handwriting? Yes. How could I not remember? Zhang Jianjun smiled and said, "The chief even asked me to hang Mo Qingdi's calligraphy in my bedroom, and I've been studying it day and night." Later, the chief kept practicing handling with ease. That must have something to do with him, right? That's right. The old man nodded with a smile. Mo Qingdi's calligraphy was really handling with ease. His strength was even, and his strokes were well proportioned. He could make people feel his strength and bearing, and also show them the beauty of his form. After that, I often reflected that ruling a big country is like cooking a small fish, so I need to do it with ease. Both of them are good, but their hearts are too vicious and their personal grudges are deep, so it's not easy to use them. But there's still a difference between them. Zhang Jianjun said with a smile. Fang Yan's heart is vicious, but he's well controlled and can control his emotions well. Not to say handling with ease, but at least he knows when to advance and when to retreat. Gong Sun Chi's character is eccentric, and as Mr. Dragon God's disciple, his murderous aura is more intense. Perhaps it's his nature, his character is sharper, like an unsheathed sword. He doesn't hide it, and he doesn't hold back. The old man glanced at Zhang Jianjun and said with a smile, "Looks like you like Fang Yan more, right?" Zhang Jianjun also smiled and said, "I have my own selfish motives. Fang Yan offered to drink with me, so I like him." Let's take a closer look. The old man said with a smile. Observe their words and actions. What we've got now is only a superficial conclusion. As for their nature, we can't make a decision yet. If we put them in such an environment, surely their nature will be more thoroughly exposed. But isn't this too dangerous? They have never been on a mission before. Danger? The old man glanced at Zhang Jianjun and said, "In ancient times, the swordsman learned the art of slaying dragons and sold it to the royal family. Nowadays, martial artists had to learn killing techniques to protect their country and their families." The way he said it was different, but the nature was the same. Whether it was in the past or in the future, these people with extraordinary skills are the pillars of our country. That is their responsibility, as it is ours. It's all for the sake of making people's lives safer and happier. I understand. Zhang Jianjun nodded solemnly and said, "I will arrange this matter well. Go and rest." The old man waved his hand and said, "I'll look at the documents for a while. I also have some documents to read." Zhang Jianjun said, "I'm in the small office outside. If you have any instructions, just call me and I'll come." The old man ignored Zhang Jianjun and walked straight to the desk. He flipped open a red document and began to read it. For people like them, there were countless decisions that needed to be made every day, and every decision was related to the people. they couldn't be the slightest bit careless. The news that Jiang Junling had been banished from the Jiang family and his name had been struck off from the Jiang family genealogy had finally spread. The news had first come from Jun Shiwen, and it was Fang Yen who had exposed this secret in front of everyone. Later on, someone had brought this matter to General Xing, and General Xing had replied with great certainty that this was indeed the case. General Xing's attitude had instantly dispelled all the suspicions of the outside world. No one had expected that the Jiang family's old patriarch, Jiang Shifu, who had always been protective of his son, would act so viciously and mercilessly. This could be considered the most exciting thing to happen in Yanjing in recent times, even suppressing the rumor that Qinitian was a mistress. Thus, the other key person who had caused the old patriarch to make this decision had also been revealed through the mouths of those with ulterior motives, Fang Yen. It was said that he had paid a visit to the Jiang family and eaten a bowl of dumplings that the old patriarch had personally made. Then, the old patriarch had straightforwardly kicked his own grandson out. Fang Yen? Everyone slapped their heads and thought, feeling that this name was a bit familiar. Very quickly, some smart people discovered that the Fang Yen who had caused Jiang Junling to be kicked out was the same person as the man who had interfered with Qinitian as a third party, Fang Yen. Fang Yen. It was Fang Yen again. In a single night, Fang Yen had become an influential figure in Yanjing. Back then, he had a conflict with Jiang Junling. That's right, back at the Maple Leaf Club, he had a direct conflict with Jiang Junling. I was also there. I heard that back then, he had caused Jiang Junling to suffer a huge loss. Jiang Junling bore a grudge and chased him all the way to Huacheng 3 years later. I don't know what Jiang Junling had done in Huacheng for the Jiang family's patriarch to actually chase him out of the Jiang family. This Fang Yen must not be provoked, and I don't know what his background is either. I just don't understand. For a woman like Qinitian, even if she wanted the stars in the sky, there would be people willing to pluck them down for her. Why would she want to be a man's mistress? One by one, the incidents where Fang Yen had made a name for himself in Yanjing were all dug out. There were even people who had made a copy of the picture of him that he had posted on the school's famous teacher program when he was teaching at Rosefinch Secondary. When someone asked about it, he would open his phone and take out the picture of Fang Yen and say, "Here, this is it." Then, those who saw the picture would have a look of surprise and say that he looked very ordinary. In all honesty, how handsome can anyone's picture be? Do they have the guts to put their ID cards on the internet? Hearing Xia Chen's description, Fang Yen said angrily. Xia Ji laughed so hard that he couldn't straighten his back and said, "That's right, when my friends said you weren't handsome, I answered them the same way." Seeing Xia Chen's happy appearance, Fang Yen couldn't help but laugh and said, "You've been busy lately, right? You look a little thinner, but you're in pretty good spirits." "Did I really lose weight?" Xia Chen happily said, "I've been using the fruit and vegetable diet method to lose weight recently." "So it really worked?" "When I look in the mirror myself, I don't feel too obvious. I've been busy before, and I still am. But aren't you being a little too disloyal? You didn't even greet me when you arrived in Beijing? If Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin hadn't come back drunk, I wouldn't have known that they had already met you. I heard you're going to participate in an event." Xia Ji rolled his eyes and said disdainfully, "Please, when will I not participate in an event? I have to participate in a lot of activities every day, okay? You just don't want to call me. You're afraid that I'll disturb your gathering with those 2 little girls, right? Sigh, men these days all like the young. No one is interested in the old ones like me. I really don't have one." Fang Yen helplessly rubbed his nose and smiled bitterly. Xia Ji picked up the coffee in front of him and took a sip. He looked at Fang Yen and asked, "Fang Yen, how are you doing? It's hard to say whether it's good or not." Fang Yen said with a smile, "It's hard to say, but at least I'm still alive." Let's just say that we're in danger every day. Don't look at us sitting together happily drinking coffee now. Maybe someone will come and kill me later. I'm not surprised that this happened. It's not a good idea to always be like this. Xia Ji sighed and said, you dodged it once, you dodged it twice, but can you hide for the rest of your life? What can I do? Fang Yan asked. Xia Chen thought for a moment, then gritted his teeth and made a difficult decision. He said, how about, I bring you back to see my grandfather and tell him that you're my best friend. We'll beg him to speak softly to the old man of the Jiang family. My grandfather and the old man of the Jiang family have some friendship. If he is willing to step forward, perhaps there will be a turn for the better. Fang Yan looked at Xia Ji with a face full of emotion and said, Xia, for you to say such words proves that you sincerely treat me as a friend. Nonsense. Xia Ji snappily said. When did I not treat you as a friend? You on the other hand, you forgot your friends and didn't even call me when you arrived in Beijing. Fang Yan smiled but did not reply. He knew that if he were to tangle with a woman on this topic, he wouldn't be able to explain it clearly in 3 to 5 days. But there's really no need. Fang Yan said. There was also another old man who brought me to visit Jiang Shifu. He also had the intention of speaking on my behalf, but he was unable to say the words. Jiang Shifu would rather banish his own grandson from the Jiang family than have any intention of privately reconciling. He is determined to fight to the death with me. To offend such a huge monster. Xia looked at Fang Yan with a face full of worry and said, you must be careful. I've lived in Beijing for so many years, but I still don't know how big the Jiang family is. I'm afraid even my grandfather doesn't know. It's really hard to feel at ease with such an opponent. I'm not afraid of your jokes. Fang Yan smiled and said, even when I sleep, I open one eye and close one eye. I'm afraid that if I accidentally fall asleep, I won't be able to open my eyes again. Even when you sleep, you turn a blind eye. That's because you've done too many guilty things, right? A young man stood behind Fang Yan and said in a hostile voice, Fang Yan, why aren't people like you dead yet? How can you still be alive? Fang Yan spread out his hands towards Xia Ji and helplessly said, look, I was right. Trouble will come knocking at your door at any time. Chapter 7:12. When people are unlucky, they will become more and more unlucky. This sentence was said by Fang Yan. Fang Yan felt that he could use his own name to name a Fang Yan law. The afternoon tea at the Palace Hotel was very famous. Some celebrities and socialites liked to meet here or talk about things. Fang Yan didn't have a house in Beijing, and he didn't want to disturb others, so he stayed at the Palace Hotel. When he called in the summer, he heard that Fang Yan was staying at the Palace Hotel, so he said that his activity venue wasn't far from here. He made an appointment with Fang Yan to have afternoon tea here. They had been sitting here for less than half an hour when the Fang Yan law came into play. Once again, bad luck came knocking on their door. It was just as he had said to Xia Ji just now. Don't look at us sitting together happily drinking coffee, maybe someone will come and kill me in a while. Of course, the person who spoke might not be able to kill Fang Yan, and there were only a handful of people in this world who could kill him. However, the other party obviously wanted to insult him or be insulted by him. In any case, he didn't want to make things easy for Fang Yan. Not even for a minute. Seeing that Fang Yan was still mocking herself, Xia smiled and said, you can even set up a stall under the bridge. There's no more accurate fortune teller than you. Then you have to take care of my business. Fang Yan said with a smile. Look, I still have some things to take care of. How about, it doesn't matter. Xia rejected Fang Yan's hidden suggestion and said, I'm not busy, I can wait for you. Fang Yan smiled. After getting the woman's understanding, he turned to look at the man standing behind him and asked, Enchanting, who gave you the courage to stand in front of me? Enchanting, Phoenix's brother. When he was very young, he had followed his family to Swallow Dock. It was just that he was a proud person and looked down on the poor kids in the village because of his status as a city dweller. The first time they met, he had a conflict with Fong Yen. That was because they drove a green Hummer back. When Yi Fengsheng saw it, he exclaimed that the car was so cool and that he wanted to buy one when he grew up. As he spoke, he used his hand to touch the hard lines of the car. Enchanting was furious. He shouted, "Don't touch my car," and punched Yi Fengsheng's back. Fong Yen stood beside Yi Fengsheng. How could he let his good brother suffer a loss? He threw Enchanting over his shoulder and sent him flying. From then on, Enchanting no longer had any contact with the children of Swallow Dock. Even the number of times he went there was pitifully low. Even if he went there, he would hide in his old house and play games. He would not play with Fong Yen, Yi Fengsheng, and the other children. The little fellows of Swallow Dock all liked phoenixes, so everyone called her Phoenix. None of Swallow Dock's friends liked Enchanting, so Li Xiaotian gave him the nickname Crow, who asked him to be disliked. Later, as Enchanting grew up, he became more and more resentful towards Fong Yen for throwing him away. There were 2 times when they met that Fong Yen wanted to be friends with him, so that Phoenix would not be in a dilemma. However, when he saw that Enchanting was looking at him with a murderous look, Fong Yen let go of that thought. You can lower your head to a dog, but don't ever think of associating with a wolf. A dog will only bite you once, but a wolf will eat you whole without spitting out the bones. After that, the 2 of them did not have any contact. They studied and worked. Fong Yen went to Huacheng, and Enchanting was nowhere to be found. He did not expect that the 2 of them would meet in this hotel restaurant. Moreover, Enchanting was so murderous that he took the initiative to look for trouble. This was the first time Fong Yen had seen someone from the clan since Phoenix's accident. He took the initiative to greet Xia Chen and said, "Sister Xia, I didn't mean to disturb your mood, but when I saw a heartless person like Fong Yen, I felt a bit of anger in my heart. I'm here to expose his ugly face, so that everyone else can be vigilant." Xia Chen was expressionless as he stirred the coffee in his cup with a spoon and said, "That's your private matter. You guys can handle it yourselves." Xia Chen was no stranger to Enchanting. He was not afraid, nor did he want to cause trouble. She had heard a little about what had happened between An Yuyao and Fong Yen, but she did not know much about what had happened in between. In the encirclement incident that took place on the summit of One Sword Peak, the people involved were either dead or escaped. A few of them were monks and Taoist priests who kept their mouths shut about this matter. Other than guessing, the outside world had no other way to know the truth. Including the reason why Jiang Junling was expelled from the Jiang clan, it also made countless people scratch their hearts and lungs to find out the truth. "Fong Yen, what did you do to my sister? Forcing her to go to the Lotus Temple to be a nun? Whether she is good or bad to you, as long as you are not blind, you will definitely be able to see it. Do you still have a conscience for treating him like this? A heartless person like you is worse than a pig or a dog. No wonder Qinitian has been rumored to be your mistress recently. So it turns out that you abandoned him after climbing up a higher branch." Enchanting's handsome face was twisted, as if he had some kind of blood feud with Fong Yen. Beside Enchanting stood a pure and sweet girl. She also looked at Fong Yen with a look of, "This guy is a scum," her face full of disgust and hostility. Heartless person. Mistress? Abandon after taking advantage of? Fong Yen carefully sorted out the contents of Enchanting's words and finally understood what he was trying to express. In other words, in Enchanting's mind, he was Phoenix's boyfriend, and Phoenix was also infatuated with him. In the end, when she ran to Huacheng to find him, she found out that he climbed up a higher branch called Qinitian, so she abandoned him and broke up with Phoenix. In a rage, Phoenix cut off her relationship with the mortal world and became a nun. What a wonderful and exciting melodramatic drama. If it was made into a novel, it would definitely be a big seller, right? Fang Yan had already thought of the name. It would be called My Ex-Girlfriend Became a Nun, and the number of hits on the website would quickly exceed 100 million. However, from Encheng's words, Fang Yan obtained an extremely useful conclusion. He understood his sister's feelings for him. Was Phoenix too obvious, or had his sister once exposed her heart to her brother? Phoenix, thinking of Phoenix's indifferent but determined appearance outside the Lotus Temple, Fang Yan's heart began to ache again. The people around him either passed away or left. Was he the descendant of Sirius? Was he destined to be alone for the rest of his life? Fang Yan opened his mouth and wanted to laugh, but felt that his laughter was too inexplicable. He looked at the girl next to Encheng and asked, "Do you believe what he said? Phoenix mentioned you to me. Every time we talked, she would talk about you. I am also a woman, and I know how a woman likes a man. She can't bear it, and she can't hide it. Every word can be led to him, and she wants the whole world to say good things about him." The girl stared at Fang Yan with disdain and said, "Phoenix suddenly decided to become a nun. It must have something to do with you, you scumbag." "It has something to do with me." Fang Yan nodded and said. "You admit it yourself?" Encheng sneered. "You ruined a woman's life, do you know that? You scumbag, are you still human?" "But, it's not the kind of relationship you think," Fang Yan said. "Not the kind of relationship we think? What kind of relationship is that?" Encheng thought that Fang Yan was quibbling, so he said harshly, "Fang Yan, stop explaining. What kind of bastard are you? I saw through you many years ago. My sister is now in the temple and praying to Buddha, but you are outside drinking. Do you have the heart? Your conscience has been eaten by dogs. Because..." Fang Yan sighed softly and said, "It's not me who forced her to be a nun. It's your family who forced her to be a nun." Encheng laughed and pointed to Fang Yan and said, "Fang Yan, are you crazy? Our family forced her to be a nun? Everyone in our family likes her, and everyone treats her like a phoenix. Why would we force her to be a nun? You just want to shirk your responsibility. How can you say such a thing? It's your family who forced her to be a nun." Fang Yan said firmly. Perhaps Encheng didn't know anything, but at this moment, Fang Yan's hatred for the Yin family suddenly emerged from the depths of his bones. He hated the Yin family, hated everyone in the Yin family. These people were all executioners, living butchers. They killed his relationship with Phoenix, and also Phoenix's life. If it wasn't for your Yin family, Phoenix and I would have been together a long time ago. Maybe we would be married and have children now. If it wasn't for your Yin family, how could Phoenix force herself to be with a pervert like Bai Xiu? If it wasn't for your Yin family. Fang Yan didn't know how to tell Encheng about what happened that night. It was the scar that Phoenix carved on his heart, and it was also the scar that Phoenix left on her face. That kind of thing was too cruel. If he told Encheng about it, everyone's soul would be hurt again. Phoenix had become a nun, and she wanted to atone for her sins. How could Fang Yan expose that scandal and turn Phoenix into a cursed and vicious woman? Even in the heart of the victim, she was not a vicious woman. How could he bear to let some insignificant people scold her like that? He didn't want Phoenix to suffer that kind of harm, even if it would make him feel wronged. However, Fang Yan didn't like the feeling of being wronged. That feeling was too uncomfortable. It was as if there was a powerful airflow running wildly in his body, looking everywhere for an exit, wanting to break out of his body. Since his heart was holding back, he had to find a way to vent it. So, Fang Yan picked up the coffee in front of him and splashed it on Encheng's angry face. Chapter 7:13. Holding one's breath and then releasing it, tightening and then relaxing, this was the way of Tai Chi. After venting his anger, Fang Yan immediately felt refreshed and his thoughts were clear. Even the summer that he was sitting on the opposite side of him, which was originally shining brightly, became 10 times or even dozens of times better than before. Even when he saw the layer of grey coffee juice on Enting's face, Fang Yen felt that he was a little cute and wanted to kiss him. "Ah," the girl next to Enting exclaimed. He didn't know if it was because her reaction was half a beat slow, or she needed time to think about whether to shout, "Ah," or "Yeah." Anyway, Fang Yen felt that the rhythm of her shouting was very unprofessional. It was like after someone slapped you in the face, you should immediately shout, "Ah," or "Yeah," to match the situation. After someone slapped you in the face, you only shouted, "Ah," after 3 hours. Wasn't there something wrong with your brain? It was also because of this reason that Fang Yen didn't like this girl very much. Although her delicate appearance was still in line with Fang Yan's aesthetic standards, he felt that the other party's acting was too exaggerated. However, the effect was achieved in the end. It should be known that most of the people who would come to a place like the Palace Hotel for afternoon tea were socialites or ladies pretending to be socialites. When they ate the pastries, they tasted them in small bites, and when they chewed, they made no sound. When they talked, if you didn't lean in, you wouldn't be able to hear what they were saying. The girl's scream immediately broke the quiet and elegant environment of the Palace Hotel. It was like a murderous howl, and everyone's eyes were attracted to it. The coffee was first poured on Enting's face in pieces, then it began to dilute and spread down his face. The grey juice dripped on Enting's face, neck, clothes. It also slipped into Enting's mouth, which made Fang Yan's stomach turn and he felt waves of nausea. He had already drunk half of that cup of coffee. Was this an indirect kiss? After the girl shouted, she finally realized what she should do. She took out a handkerchief from her pocket and quickly used it to wipe the coffee on Enting's face. Enting grabbed the handkerchief from her hand and wiped his face. His eyes were bloodshot, and he stared at Fang Yen and shouted, "Fang Yen, don't go too far." "Who's the one who's going too far?" Fang Yen pushed away the sofa under his butt and stood up. He looked at Enting with a serious expression and said, "Enting, I don't know if you really don't know or not. Go back and ask. Ask your parents, ask your uncles, or ask that old man in your family. Go and ask them, did they go too far? I don't need to go back and ask them. I can see it myself now. Everyone with eyes can see it." Enting pointed at his messy face and shouted, "Fang Yen, how immoral are you to do something like this? Your behavior is just like a shrew's way of fighting and swearing. No wonder you can't be seen in public. No wonder my family doesn't want my sister to be with you. The fundamental reason is that you don't deserve my sister. You are a rustic wild dog. Do you think you can rush to Yanjing and get a foothold at the foot of the imperial city just by wagging your tail? Let me tell you, you are dreaming." Fang Yen looked at Enting as if he was looking at an idiot. He pointed at his feet and said, "I have already got a foothold at the foot of the imperial city. Am I dreaming now? It's such a simple thing. Is it a very difficult thing for you to stand here with your feet firmly? Do you need to wag your tail at others? Enting, do you know what I dislike the most about you? I don't dislike your fake aloofness or the pride in your bones. I don't dislike your attitude that you are number one in the world. This is indeed a bit annoying. What I dislike the most is that you are standing in front of me at this moment." Fang Yen pointed at the crowd that was looking at them and said, "Do you know what they were talking about just now? They were talking about why I forced Jiang Shifu to expel Jiang Junling from the family. They were talking about why Qinitian, that kind of girl, would like me. Who is my opponent? It's Jiang Junling and the entire Jiang family." Fang Yen swept an extremely disdainful glance at Enting and said, "I am the focus of the crowd. I am the topic of discussion of the entire Yanjing people. But you came to provoke me at this time. What do you mean? You want to use my name to become famous? You want to step on me to rise? Do you think that by doing this, others will think that you have the qualifications to be my opponent? I can splash coffee on your face. Do you have the ability to splash coffee on my face? Enchanting breathed heavily. His black pupils darkened and the white of his eyes turned red. His eyes showed a kind of sick blood-red color, like a bloodthirsty wolf or a crazy dog. After listening to Fang Yan's words, he turned around and ran to a table. He picked up a lady's coffee and wanted to splash it on Fang Yan's face. Fang Yan reacted quickly. He pushed Enchanting's little girlfriend in front of him as a shield and said mockingly, "Splash it. Do you have the ability to splash it? You bastard." Enchanting felt that his bladder was about to explode because of Fang Yan. He held the cup of hot coffee and circled around Fang Yan, wanting to splash the coffee on his face. However, when he circled around, Fang Yan pulled the girl and also circled around, saying, splash it on my face if you have the ability." No matter how Enchanting circled around, the one in front of him was always the miserable and pale little face of his little girlfriend. The onlookers were all stunned by this scene. They thought that they would see a wonderful show, but no one expected. This good show was such a child's play. "I can't believe my eyes," a young girl in a red dress said to her companion. "That guy. The guy who dragged a woman as a shield, is he really the Fang Yan who forced Jiang Junling away? Are they playing house? Let's see if there are any cameras nearby. They must be filming." Xia Ji was a little regretful. When Fang Yan just said that she could leave in advance if she had something to do, she shouldn't have hesitated and quickly left with her bag. How could I become friends with such a guy? Xia Ji wailed in her heart. Her head was lowered, her long hair was scattered, and she tried not to look into anyone's eyes. She really couldn't afford to lose this person. "Are you going to splash me?" Fang Yan said proudly. "Can't splash it?" Enchanting raised the coffee cup in his hand several times, but his little girlfriend exclaimed, "No, Enchanting doesn't want it," so Enchanting couldn't pour it down. The hotel staff finally couldn't stand it anymore as the commotion was so joyous and unscrupulous. The security guard at the door and the welcoming girl ran over together. The welcoming girl advised Enchanting, "Sir, please put down the coffee cup. If you have something to say, let's talk." However, the security guard walked towards Fang Yan and said, "Sir, please let go of this lady. You are breaking the law. If you don't let her go, we will call the police." Fang Yan pointed at Enchanting and said, "He wants to splash me with coffee." "Sir, I promise you." Pa, when Enchanting was dodging the greeter's action, the coffee in his hand spilled out. The entire cup of coffee and the cup smashed into the security guard's chest. The security guard was stunned for a moment, then let out a blood-curdling scream. The coffee was too damn hot. Fang Yan sighed softly, looked at the security guard who was affected, and said, "You see, you can't guarantee anything." Enchanting looked at the security guard who was scalded by the coffee and stopped chasing Fang Yan. Fang Yan let go of the girl, patted her on the shoulder and said, "Go comfort him. What if he wants to commit suicide?" The girl's eyes were wet. She rushed to hug Enchanting and cried. Enchanting's eyes were also red. He reached out and hugged the girl. He stared at Fang Yan fiercely and said, "Fang Yan, today's shame, okay." Fang Yan waved his hand impatiently and said, "I know you want revenge. I know it even if you don't say it. Hurry up, or you won't be able to leave if I change my mind." Fang Yan pointed to the security guard who was covering his chest and said, "Pay for his medical expenses. It's not easy for him to find a job." Enchanting didn't say a word. He pulled the girl's hand and quickly left. Fang Yan took out a handkerchief from his pocket and handed it to the receptionist. He said, "Help him wipe it." He then took out a credit card from his pocket and said, "I'll pay for the medical expenses, I'll pay for the broken things. I'll leave this card with you for now." When Fang Yan sat down again, his face was full of exhaustion. Xia looked at his expression for a long time, then said in a low voice, Fang Yan, you're too tired. Yeah, I'm too tired. Fang Yan said with infinite emotion, if you want to take care of everyone's feelings, then you can only sacrifice your own feelings. I'm not afraid of you laughing at me, but when I saw that girl crying in her boyfriend's arms, I was actually very envious of her. I've always felt that I was the one who felt the most wronged and should be crying. But I just can't cry. If you want to cry, then cry. Xia looked at his sad eyes with infinite pity and said, didn't King Lu sing it already? A man can cry, it's not a sin. I can't cry. Fang Yan rubbed her eyes hard, showing a strong look that wouldn't be easily overwhelmed by life. If you can't lower your head, the crown will fall. You can't cry. Idiots will laugh. Puchi. After holding it in for a long time, Xia couldn't help but laugh out loud. Fang Yan became anxious and quickly explained, don't misunderstand, I didn't say you were an idiot. Chapter 7:14. It would have been better if Fang Yan didn't explain, but after listening to Fang Yan's explanation, Xia really wanted to smash the coffee cup in his hand into his face. What do you mean I didn't say you were an idiot? Xia thought angrily. However, she was happy in her heart. The only person who dared to talk to her like this, who dared to use such an insulting word like idiot to joke with her, was probably the only one in Fang Yan in all these years. Other men either treated her as a high and mighty star, or as a goddess with an extraordinary background. Some people, even if they wanted to show their affection and joke with her, it would just be a dragonfly touching the surface of the water. It would be too forceful and deliberate, and they would just laugh it off. Instead, they would think, so the relationship between us is just like that. Fang Yan said it so casually, so naturally joking with her. In his heart, he did indeed treat her as a friend. Look, a woman's mind is so strange. You love her and hold her, and she feels that your bones are cheap. If you belittled her and stepped on her, she would think that you were a bastard. It was not easy to master the degree of the relationship. However, a friendly reminder, don't treat women as goddesses. Fang Yan smiled and said, this is a line from a TV series. It's very popular on the internet. I'll borrow it for a while, I've seen this TV series. Xia Chen said, as long as it's an outstanding work or a work that has a good reaction from the market, I will find time to carefully appreciate it. I'm always worried that I'm not doing well enough, so I have to constantly learn from others' strengths. You're already the movie queen, who can be your teacher? Fang Yan said with a smile. How can there be a time to be satisfied? Xia shook his head and said, you're a little abnormal today, I thought of a friend. Fang Yan said. Her ending shouldn't be like this, is it Enchantting's sister? I don't have much contact with her, but I heard that she's very beautiful. She's a famous beauty in Beijing. Xia said, they definitely wouldn't have thought that a person with such a vicious mouth would be so kind. Are you complimenting me? Fang Yan asked with a smile. If it weren't for her feelings, I'm afraid you wouldn't have let Enchanting off so easily, right? Do you still remember what happened to us in Huacheng Sky No. 1? You could even deal with an insignificant person so cleanly. The Yin family has owed you too much, yet you allowed him to walk out unscathed. Xia thoughtfully sized up Fang Yan and said, I can't tell, I didn't expect you to be such a passionate person. Fang Yan forced a smile and said, how is this sentimental? She was my first love. Have you ever had your first love? It's the first time I've experienced the feeling of my heart racing. Unfortunately, it's impossible for us to do it again. A lot of things can never go back to the past. Xia Chen comforted her and said, if we can't walk together, then we can only say that you guys aren't suitable. In any case, you have Yi Rou, Qinitian, Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin now. Especially Jiang Qin, it was as if he had been possessed. So many years had passed. How old was she at that time? I really don't know what you did to a child back then. I just asked them to study hard and make progress every day. Fang Yan smiled and said, if you don't believe me, go back and ask them. Maybe it's because they think what I said makes too much sense. Everyone knows what to say. Even if it makes sense, so what? Xia Chen pouted coquettishly and said, however, your current situation is getting worse and worse. You've already offended the Jiang family, and now you've offended the Yin family, as well as some enemies that I might not even know about. Fang Yan, how can you have such an ability? Why can you offend so many people wherever you go? I've explained this to others. I told them it's because I'm too outstanding. Fang Yan said. But in front of you, I have no choice but to tell the truth, Xia Zhi's face was full of curiosity as he asked, because what? Because my luck with women is too good. Fang Yan said in a low voice, if I didn't know Lu Chaoga back then, I wouldn't have come into contact with Jiang Zhulu. If I didn't come into contact with Jiang Zhulu, I wouldn't have become enemies with Jiang Junling. Later on, I realized that all the bad guys in the world are good friends. I don't know if your luck with women is good or not. Xia Kiki giggled and said, your last sentence is right. All the bad guys in the world are good friends. At that level, all the bad guys know each other. Because this circle is too small, there are always a few people jumping around. So, I poked a hornet's nest. You can't say that. Xia brushed away the hair on his forehead and said with a serious expression, you have a lot of resources on hand. You have Swallow Fort, at least the master of Swallow Fort supports you. You have the support of the Qin family, your own Chaoyan Empire, and the solid foundation of Huacheng. You also have so many friends. If you need me, I'm willing to bring you back and beg the old man to help you. Although the strength on your side is too scattered, and you might be at a disadvantage in a clash, it's not like you're completely powerless. Fang Yan, think about it. 3 years ago, if someone had told me that you could contend against a giant like the Jiang family, I wouldn't have believed it no matter what. But now, I believe that you can contend against them, and I even believe that you will win in the end. I don't know if I will win, I only know that I must fight. Fang Yan said resolutely, fighting is just a possibility of dying. If you don't fight, you will definitely die. Zhang Jianjun said that there was a mission for him and Gong Sun Qi to carry out, but Fang Yan did not receive any news from the other party for a while, so he returned to Swallow Dock first. Although he was now a hot topic in Beijing, he was still unfamiliar with the city. Although Swallow Dock was his sad place, it also gave him a sense of belonging. This time, he came back to ask for an answer from his teacher, and also to accompany his grandfather, whose health was getting worse and worse, and his mother, who had lost her lover. Fang Yan returned to Swallow Dock. Except for taking a walk with Yi Ro occasionally, he spent most of his time walking around Swallow Dock with his grandfather, Fang Hui, or accompanying his mother, Lu Wan, to fertilize and weed the vegetable field beside his father's grave. The fresh fruits were all ripe, and he could pick a large basket every time. He couldn't finish it at home, so Fang Yan would carry a basket to the Yi family whenever he had something to do. Today, as usual, after sending his mother home in the Fang Yan, he carried a basket of freshly picked cucumbers, peppers, eggplants, and other food to the Yi family. Before he reached the Yi family's door, he heard the sound of fighting coming from the yard. Fang Yan could not help but grin. He did not expect that there would be someone else in Swallow Dock who dared to come to the Yi family and make trouble. After getting closer, he realized that it was not the case at all. Yi Fengsheng, don't be a coward, come out. Yi Fengsheng, do you think I can't do anything to you if you hide? Let me tell you, if you don't explain yourself today, I will beat you up every time I see you. Yi Fengsheng. Don't pull me, Yi Fengsheng, you irresponsible coward. Fang Yan found the voice to be familiar. When he crossed the threshold of the Yi family, he realized that the person cursing was Bailey Lu, whom he had not seen for a while. Bailey Lu was dressed in short clothes with a ribbon tied on his head. His sleeves were rolled up, and he looked like he was going to fight to the death. Bailey Lu's sister, Bailey Qingzhu, stood beside her brother and kept pulling her brother's sleeves. She tried to persuade him in a low voice, but Bailey Lu, who was in a rage, had no intention of listening to her explanation. Fang Yan did not see Yi Fengsheng. Instead, he saw a few other juniors standing at the side watching the show. Seeing Fang Yan come in, Yezi came over with a smile and said, "There's a show to watch." "What show?" Fang Yan asked curiously. Unexpectedly, Yezi's face turned red all of a sudden. She glared at Fang Yan angrily and said, "You're so annoying. Did you do it on purpose?" "What do you mean, I did it on purpose?" Fang Yan felt even more strange and said, "I just came over, so I don't know what happened. That's why I asked you. Why are you like this?" "I'm ignoring you." Yezi stomped her feet and ran to the backyard. Obviously, she went to inform Yi Ro that Fang Yan was here. Fang Yan touched his nose and smiled bitterly. He handed the basket in his hand to the maid, Xiao Mei, and said, "Send it to the kitchen." Xiao Mei took it with a smile and said, "Young master, our family has also grown the vegetables you sent, how can they be the same?" Fang Yan said with his eyes wide open. "Look at these vegetables. Don't they look different from the vegetables in your house?" Xiao Mei looked at them seriously. The maid said, "No. Not careful." Fang Yan said, "Not careful enough." Da Vinci said that there are no two eggs that are exactly the same in the world, and it is impossible for there to be two eggplants that are exactly the same in the world. Stop talking nonsense and quickly send it in. Fang Yan wanted to watch the show from the side, but the show just had to come to him. Yi Fengsheng suddenly appeared behind him and whispered in his ear, "Little Yanzi, you have to think of a way to save me." Fang Yan was tall and thin, while Yi Fengsheng was as fat as a ball. Therefore, when he hid behind Fang Yan, it was like a person holding a leaf to cover his body. Sure enough, Bailey Lu discovered Yi Fengsheng's whereabouts. He leaped and punched towards where Fang Yan was standing. Chapter 7:15. The fist wind whistled, and the powerful qi crisscrossed. A majestic aura swept towards where Fang Yan and Yi Fengsheng were standing. It was like a giant tornado had suddenly appeared, engulfing the two of them in an overwhelming manner. A seemingly solid black veil appeared above Fang Yan and Yi Fengsheng's heads. That was the place where the wind from the fists gathered. The murderous aura released by the fists tore and collided with the surrounding air, giving off tiny explosive sounds. The murderous aura condensed above their heads and no longer dispersed, waiting for Bailey Lu's fist, which was the real killing move, to arrive and detonate the entire strong wind boundary. The Bailey clan started with their fists and became famous through their fists. The Bailey clan's godly fist was the strongest and most tyrannical fist, and also the fiercest and most courageous fist. Their fist manuals were filled with phrases such as "one punch, no return, injuring 3,000 enemies, injuring 800. The peak of the Bailey clan's godly fist technique was when the boxing lunatic Bailey Feng was still alive. Bailey Feng had a nickname called Bailey Lunatic because his fist technique was exquisite and he fought with no regard for his own life. He was also called Bailey Lunatic. Bailey Feng entered the way with his fists. His 100 miles godly fists were extremely effective in his hands. Countless experts of the Jianghu were sent flying by his fists. They did not even have the strength to resist. For a period of time, there was even a saying that it was better to provoke the awakening celestial sword than to provoke the 100-mile fist. The awakening celestial sword was the famed weapon of Xiangxi's swift swordsman Zhao Jingshan. A single awakening celestial sword was unstoppable. Bailey Feng used the crazy fist to conquer the heavenly Tao, but he didn't expect that he would really become a madman. After failing to climb the mountain, he spent his days shouting that someone was out to kill him and that he was going to commit suicide. In the end, he really committed suicide. Bailey Fong was the Bailey clan's most likely expert to successfully climb the heavenly way. He was also an expert who was infinitely close to the heavenly way. Bailey Lu's death was a huge blow to the Bailey clan. There was even a saying that, "Godly fists do not enter the path." The godly fist could not enter the Tao. The people of the Bailey clan refused to accept this. Generation after generation worked hard, risking their lives, thinking of using their clan's ultimate arts to climb the heavenly Tao. Unfortunately, the world was mostly like this. You wouldn't be rewarded just because you put in the effort. To this day, the Bailey family still did not have a single fist master who could successfully climb the heavenly Tao. This was also the reason why Bailey Lu was so crazy. He toured the famous mountains and rivers all day long, looking for heroes all over the world to challenge. The pressure was huge. However, even if you're crazy, it's fine if you challenge others, but you can't just hit anyone you see, right? What if I can't beat you? Fang Yen cursed in his heart. Fang Yen, save me! Yi Fengsheng shouted from behind. Bailey Lu was obviously coming for Yi Fengsheng, but Yi Fengsheng's strength was not as good as Bailey Lu's. Moreover, he had a guilty conscience, so how could he have the courage to fight? Therefore, he placed his hopes on Fang Yen, who was standing in front of him. Fang Yen was his good brother, and Fang Yen was his cousin-in-law. Fang Yan's kung fu was good, and Fang Yan's character was wonderful. Fang Yen would not leave them in the lurch. Although Yi Fengsheng's face was full of shock, his heart was calm. He knew that Fang Yen would help him take this punch. Fang Yen gathered his energy in his dantian and took a step forward with his right foot. Yi Fengsheng's eyes were mesmerized, and he was very touched. His guess was right, Fang Yen had fought back, Fang Yen had fought back. If there was trouble, look for Fang Yen. Fang Yen would let you not be bothered anymore. Fang Yen tiptoed with his right foot and leaped high into the air. He struck out with his palm and pierced through the black gauze above his head. So cool. Yi Fengsheng crossed his arms in front of his chest, and there were hot tears in his eyes. Fang Yan's counterattack was so cool, and he jumped so high. Something's wrong. Yi Fengsheng's chubby cheeks suddenly puffed up. This was because he realized that Fang Yen had been flying all this time. He was like a rocket that had been shot straight up into the sky. Based on his reaction and flying height, if he didn't fly up into the sky like Zhou Xingxing did, and then rush down to kill Bai Lilu with the Buddha's palm, then there was only one possibility: he ran away. F***ck, he actually ran away. Yi Fengsheng's hair stood on end, and he felt like his whole body was about to explode. When Yi Fengsheng realized that something was wrong, it was already impossible to turn around and run away. He gritted his teeth, and suddenly gathered his strength. He took 2 steps forward, and clenched his fists to meet Bai Lilu's punch. Too late. Bai Lilu's fist was already in front of Yi Fengsheng's face. Fang Yen. Yi Fengsheng roared in anger. Pa! Their fists collided. However, without any surprise, Yi Fengsheng's body was like a rolling gourd as he tumbled backwards. One was prepared, and the other was a hasty response. One was ready to attack, and the other was an idiot. It was obvious that Yi Fengsheng was no match for Bai Lilu. Gotcha! He knocked over a ginkgo tree in the yard, and his body fell heavily into the nursery. Fang Yen. Yi Fengsheng lay on the small sapling, and cried out Fang Yan's name. Aren't we friends? Aren't we friends? Aren't we people who love each other? Why? Why did you do this to me? Why did you jump so high? Fang Yen stood in the corner of the yard, and snatched half of the cucumber from Ye's hand. He took a bite, and said, I haven't seen you for a long time, and Bai Lilu's punching skills have improved. This punch is not flashy, not frivolous, and not opportunistic. It uses strength as the bone, courage as the flesh, and one punch. Ouch. Fang Yen touched the arm that Yi had pinched, and looked at Yi angrily. He said, "Didn't I just snatch half of your cucumber? Did you have to use so much strength? I was the one who brought this cucumber to you just now." "Fang Yen, you still have the nerve to say that? Who wants the cucumber? Did I pinch you because of the cucumber?" Yi looked at Fang Yen with disdain, and said, "Yi Fengsheng is your good friend and brother. When he was in danger, you actually ran away. I didn't run away." Fang Yen explained, "I was still watching from the side. Watching him get beaten up." Fang Yen nodded, and said, "Men always have to experience this day." Fang Yen smiled, and chewed on the cucumber. He watched Bai Lilu rush towards Yi Fengsheng, who was lying on the ground. He sat on Yi Fengsheng's body, and punched Yi Fengsheng's face, and scolded, "Yi Fengsheng, you bastard." Yi Fengsheng held his head with both hands, and shouted, "Don't hit my face, don't hit my face. Help." Bai Lilu punched him again, and roared angrily, "Yi Fengsheng, if you don't give me an explanation, I won't let you off." Bang, bang, help, help. Bai Lilu seemed to have a deep hatred for Yi Fengsheng. He kept punching Yi Fengsheng's head, chest, and all the parts of his body that could be hit. Bai Lilu lay there, howling like a pig being slaughtered. He shouted for help and scolded Fang Yen at the same time, "Fang Yen, you bastard. You're not loyal to your friends. Help. Someone, help me." "Fang Yen, did you give birth to a son?" "Mimi. Help, he's beating me to death." "Fang Yen, you bastard, I'm going to cut off all ties with you." Fang Yen looked aggrieved, and said to Yi, who was standing next to him, "Tell me, who did I offend?" It was clearly Bai Lilu who was beating him. Yi snorted, and was not willing to talk to Fang Yen at all. "Is your Yi family still reasonable?" Fang Yen said with a bitter smile. Bailey Qingzhu rushed over, hugged her brother's arm, and cried, "Brother! Brother, don't hit him anymore, you're going to kill him." Bai Lilu wanted to hit him again, but his sister held his arm tightly and refused to let go, so he could not use too much force. "Let go." Bai Lilu sighed. "Brother, this has nothing to do with Fengsheng, it's me. I blame myself." "You're still speaking up for him?" Bai Lilu wanted to punch him again. "Blame me, blame me." Yi Fengsheng hurriedly apologized, and said, "It's all my fault. Don't blame Qingzhu." "I didn't blame Qingzhu at all." Bai Lilu wanted to hit him again. "Brother." Bailey Qingzhu was angry. She hugged her brother's arm, and said, "Can't we talk nicely?" "Yes, yes. Talk nicely." Fang Yen walked over with a cucumber in his mouth, and advised, "It's not a big deal, why do you have to get physical? Let the people outside see it as a joke." "What did you say?" "It's not a big deal." Bai Lilu punched Yi Fengsheng's head. "Do you know what this fatso did? He shouldn't have done anything." Fang Yen said, "He's a human, right? You." Bai Lilu's face turned green and white, and he stared at Fang Yen, and said, "You know everything, and you still dare to say that it's not a big deal?" "It's not a big deal to begin with," Fang Yen said with a serious face. "How old is your sister this year?" 21. "She's an adult, right? What are you trying to say?" "Yi Fengsheng and your sister are both adults, and they have the ability to be responsible for their own actions. No matter what happened between them, that's their business. They haven't gotten married officially, and they're all ready." Bai Lilu sat on Yi Fengsheng's fat belly, and said angrily, I know. Fang Yen nodded, and said, "This is Yi Fengsheng's fault. What kind of man is a martial arts practitioner if he can't even control his lower body? But now that you've beaten him up, your anger has subsided." "Alright, I know, it hasn't completely subsided, but it's at least half subsided, right? So, can't we just settle the rest of the matter?" If you beat him to death, then this official marriage really can't be realized. Yes, yes. Yi Fengsheng nodded repeatedly, and said, I'm not an irresponsible man. Fang Yan, you bastard, I want to break off all ties with you, even if you scold me. Fang Yan looked at Yi Fengsheng, and said with a face full of sincerity, I will still help you. Chapter 7:16. Even if you scold me, I will still help you. Fang Yan acted like he was doing this for Yi Fengsheng's sake. Yi Fengsheng blinked his big eyes and didn't know how to fight back. Bailey Lu looked at Fang Yan mockingly and sneered, who ran so fast just now? I haven't seen you for such a long time, but your jumping ability has improved. This idiot. Yezi despised Fang Yan to the extreme. When his brother was in trouble, he bounced away like a cannonball, but his brother was beaten up like a pig's head. Such a man was too disloyal, right? And he still had the cheek to say something like, even if you scold me, I'll still help you. Those who were not loyal always liked to say things like, supremely righteous, but those who were truly righteous would never say such nonsense. He's not an idiot. Yi Ro stood behind Yezi and retorted softly. Ah. Yezi was shocked. She patted her chest and said, Sister, when did you come? I just came, Yi Ro said softly. Why don't you make any sound when you walk? You scared me to death by suddenly talking. Yezi complained. Of course he's not an idiot, he's very smart. When he saw danger coming, he ran faster than anyone else. How can such a person be an idiot? I scolded him wrongly, I should have scolded him for being a bastard. Yi Ro looked at Yezi's delicate and pretty side profile and asked, Is Fang Yan closer to Bailey Lu or Yi Fengsheng? Of course it's Yi Fengsheng. I used to think so, but look at him just now, he's so embarrassed. Why did Bailey Lu come to our house to find trouble with Yi Fengsheng? I don't know, but it sounds like it has something to do with Bailey Qingzhu. Could it be that Yi Fengsheng and Bailey Qingzhu have already? Yezi blushed and asked curiously. Bailey Lu came here in a fit of anger, so he naturally needs to vent his anger. Fang Yan and Yi Fengsheng are close. If Fang Yan fought with him for Yi Fengsheng, what would the result be? Yi Ro continued to ask. Yezi thought about it seriously and said, Do you mean that Fang Yan deliberately avoided Bailey Lu in order not to anger him? In order to not ruin Yi Fengsheng and Bailey Qingzhu's happy occasion, he sent his good friend Yi Fengsheng out to be beaten up by Bailey Lu? Yi Wen nodded and said, That's right. Humph, I don't believe it. Yezi still couldn't believe Fang Yan's character. She said, Sister, your heart and soul have been hooked by him. He just said that cucumbers were more bitter than bitter melons, and you would definitely say that cucumbers were more bitter than bitter melons. You believe whatever he says. I think Yi Fengsheng might have offended him in some way, and he bore a grudge against him. That's why he sent that idiot Yi Fengsheng away. Yi Ro thought for a moment and nodded. It's possible. Yezi looked at Yi Ro helplessly and said, Sister, why did you give up so easily? What about your principles? What about your beliefs? What about your love? Yi Ro glanced at her indifferently and said, he would indeed do such a thing. Fang Yan saw that Yi Ro had arrived, but he didn't know what they were talking about. He stuffed the cucumber in his hand into his mouth, and when he spoke, there was a hint of green in his voice. He said, Get up, get up. Let's talk things out. Although Yi Fengsheng is fatso, pressing him like this, what if he loses weight? Fang Yan thought that Yi Fengsheng's facial features were actually very good. If he really lost weight, he would be a challenge to his position as the captain of Swallow Doc's Prince Charming team and as the face of the team. In comparison, he quite liked being friends with Fatso. Brother. Bailey Qingzhu grabbed her brother's arm and said, Get up. Bailey Lu hesitated for a moment. He knew that if Fang Yan didn't help and Yi Fengsheng didn't fight back, he wouldn't be able to continue fighting. He climbed up from Bailey Lu's body and shook off the dust on his body. He stared fiercely at Yi Fengsheng and said, "Yi Fengsheng, you must give our Bailey family an explanation. You actually dared to do such a thing. Do you think our Bailey family is easy to bully?" Bailey Qingzhu ran over to help Yi Fengsheng up, but she didn't succeed. Yi Fengsheng was too fat. Fang Yan liked to see this kind of situation happen. He ran over happily and pulled Yi Fengsheng's arm to help him up from the ground. He helped him tidy up the grass and dirt on his body and asked with concern, "Fengsheng, are you okay?" "Fang Yan, I want to break off all ties with you." Yi Fengsheng's expression was ferocious as he roared fiercely. "You still don't want to solve the problem?" Fang Yan asked indifferently. Yi Fengsheng blinked his eyes and his fat face was full of smiles. He said, "What a joke. How can a relationship of several decades be broken just like that? How can I break off all ties with you? How many years have we known each other? I've known you since I was born. Are you really willing to help me solve my problem?" "That depends on what problem it is," Fang Yan said. "Actually, it's not a big problem," Yi Fengsheng said. "How big is not a big problem?" Yi Fengsheng pulled Fang Yan's sleeve to the corner of the wall and said in a low voice, "Qingzhu is pregnant." Fang Yan's expression stiffened. Then, he began to rejoice that he had dodged just now. If he hadn't dodged, Bailey Lu's anger would have reached his heart. Perhaps he would still be fighting with his life now. Who asked his good brother and his sister to create a new life? "What's with your expression?" Yi Fengsheng said angrily. "You also know. Between men and women, it's very easy for things to go wrong. At that time, I didn't think that it would be so easy." Fang Yan composed himself and looked at Yi Fengsheng's fat face. He asked very seriously, "What do you want to do?" "I haven't thought about it yet," Yi Fengsheng said. "What do you mean by haven't thought about it yet?" Fang Yan said, gritting his teeth. Yi Fengsheng thought for a while, then looked at Fang Yan and said, "Fang Yan, you know. I've always wanted to go out and see. Whether it's the North Sea or the Gobi Desert, or go to extremely cold places. I want to go out and see while I'm still young. Swallow Dock is too small, I want to go out and see. But now that you have a child, I know, but I'm not ready yet. My fierce tiger fist has just become a tiger, I want to have another breakthrough, but now that you have a child," Yi Fengsheng looked at Fang Yan and asked, "What do you think I should do?" "Get married," Fang Yan said. "Marry Bailey Qingzhu and make her your wife," Yi Fengsheng opened his mouth and said, "It's not that I don't want to marry her, but, since you're willing, then marry her," Fang Yan said firmly. He knew that Yi Fengsheng had premarital phobia. For a young man who always laughed and played around, it was very difficult for him to make a decision when he suddenly encountered something like this. He did not have much experience in relationships, and this was his first time experiencing the life of a married couple. He thought that after marriage, he would lose his freedom. He had not even thought about whether there would be any problems living with another woman, but this was his responsibility, an obligation that he had to bear. Yi Fengsheng stared at Fang Yan with wide eyes. He did not understand why he was so determined. Fang Yan sighed and said, "We grew up together with Qingzhu, and I also treat her like a younger sister." "You like Qingzhu in your heart, don't you?" "Yes." Yi Fengsheng nodded. Regarding this, he did not hide it. "Qingzhu and you are in love with each other, and you are willing. Since this has already happened, you can't blame anyone else. However, Qingzhu is pregnant with your child, so both of you must stand up and bear the responsibility. Qingzhu has already stood up, do you not dare to?" "Who says I don't dare? I just don't know what to do. Am I right? This is the first time you've experienced something like this, and you don't know how to handle it, right? You can't imagine your future life, so you're afraid, right?" You seem to be very good at it. Don't tell me you've already been married. Don't lie to my cousin. If you lie to her, she will kill you. Of course I've never been married, Fang Yan said angrily. We're talking about you now, don't drag me into it. Also, if you don't stand up and bear the responsibility, do you think the Bailey family will let this go? Bailey Lu will kill you, Fang Yan said. Everyone in the Bailey family will want to kill you, Fang Yan said. Fang Yan's words were not an alarmist. Swallow Dock was located at the junction of the old and the new era. Although many people in the village drove luxury cars and used mobile phones and all kinds of modern home appliances, some old traditions were still preserved. Furthermore, every family valued their reputation very much. A young woman getting pregnant before marriage was considered a big deal in Swallow Dock, a very, very big deal. This was also the reason why Bailey Lu came to the Yi family to beat them up after he got the news, and until now, no one in charge of the Yi family had come out to scold him. Everyone knew that the Yi family was in the wrong, so they had to let the Bailey family calm down first. Fang Yan tidied up Yi Fengsheng's clothes and said with a smile, "Fengsheng, you've grown up, and we've all grown up. Although we still play and joke like before, play the games we liked to play when we were young, and tell childish jokes. But, there are some responsibilities that we have to bear. You have a child, and you're the father of a child. So, you have to stand up, marry the woman you like, and give your child a warm home. I think this is much braver and greater than you going to the North Sea, the Gobi Desert, and the Arctic." Chapter 7:17. Fang Yan and Yi Fengsheng whispered to each other. Yi sneered and said, "Fang Yan is not a good man. He will definitely persuade Yi Fengsheng to leave. Yi Fengsheng has always wanted to go to Huaqing with him. If uncle hadn't stopped him, fearing that he wouldn't be able to control himself after going to Huaqing, he would have run away long ago." Yi Rou looked at Fang Yan tenderly with a slight smile on her lips. Since her relationship with Fang Yan was confirmed, she didn't know why she always looked at him and thought about him. Even if she didn't say a word and just looked at him quietly, she felt extremely happy and satisfied. Hearing Yi Rou's words, Yi Rou shook her head gently and said, "Fang Yan is not such a person, sister, why are you speaking for him again? Have you forgotten? How many girls came to see him when he was in mourning in Swallow Dock? Jiang Qin and Yuan Lin don't need to be mentioned. They would come every few days. Teacher and student relationship? Which student would treat their teacher like this? And that Qin Etienne, she clearly wants to compete with you. Look at her expression when she looks at Fang Yan. Look at what she has done for Fang Yan. And do you know what gift she gave him for the first time? Fang Yingxiong secretly told me that the so-called red heart black jade was priceless. It was said that a small piece could buy a courtyard house in Yanjing City. Also, that black turtle ointment, the two big red dragons that the Fang family raised in the living room. Aren't they ashamed? A girl gave so many gifts for the first time. Does she want to buy a man? That's too much. The more Yi Rou said, the angrier she became. She felt more and more indignant for her sister. She said, "And Xia Tian, how could he have anything to do with the big star Xia Tian? And that? Sister, I don't mean to criticize you, but you are too naive and have no experience in love. You don't know that men are very greedy when it comes to love. They want whatever they see. How can they be satisfied? So, you must never be deceived by her. The deeper the love, the deeper the scar." "I won't," Yi Rou said calmly. "Sister, I can feel it." "Feel what?" "He cares about me," Yi Rou said. "Just like I care about him." Yi rolled his eyes and said, "Here we go again." There it was again. "Are you going to tell me the story of how he risked his life to save you after you failed to climb the heavenly axiom? Why didn't he mention it when you risked your life to save him? He will keep it in his heart." "Keep it in your heart?" I'm just afraid that he has already forgotten. You still have to be wary of her, those girls are too beautiful. Especially that Chinitian. Although we look so arrogant, men are all cheap wretches. When they see such a woman, they are like a wolf that sees a bone and want to pounce on her. What was that saying again? Conquer. Men have a conquering nature in their bones. Do you think you know men very well? Yi Ro looked at her sister who had lived in Yanjing for a long time and asked softly. I've seen too much. Too many romantic things have happened around me. A girl in our dorm was successfully pursued by a guy. She washed and cooked for him every day, bought him clothes and shoes, and treated him like he was her own son. The two of them lived together outside, but she accidentally got pregnant. The girl wanted to call her boyfriend to discuss how to solve the problem together, but the guy's phone was turned off. She came back crying and said that she wanted to commit suicide. My dormitory sisters couldn't stand it anymore and sent people to find the boy. Do you know where they found him? In another girl's rental house. It turned out that he had more than one girlfriend. Yi Ro knew there were all kinds of disgusting things happening outside. She also knew that in this era where people lost their faith, people were very presumptuous and casual about their own feelings. But she believed in herself and was also willing to believe in Fang Yen. Ye's words were very serious, but she was not angry about it. Because only those who were stabbed in the heart and hidden pain would be really angry. She knew that Yi did it for her own good. Yi thought that she stayed in Swallow Dock all day, so she didn't know the evil of people, the fickleness of the world, and the fragility of feelings. Yi Ro looked at Yi and said softly, how about we make a bet? Bet on what? Fang Yen won't take Yi Fengsheng away. Yi Ro said, he will persuade Yi Fengsheng to take this responsibility. Impossible? Yi Ro opened her eyes wide and said, well, I'll bet with you. What do you want to bet? If you lose, go and apologize to Fang Yen. Yi Ro said. Yi Ro thought for a while and nodded. She said, okay, I promise you. But what if you lose? I apologize to you. No, you're my sister. I don't want you to apologize for me. Yi Ro rolled her dark eyes and thought quickly. She said, if you lose, you'll go shopping with me in Yanjing for a day. I can arrange the whole day. How about it? Yi Ro thought for a while. Although she didn't like shopping, she still agreed. She said, okay. I'd like to see if Fang Yen is like what you said. Hey, he took Yi Fengsheng to see Bailey Lu. Fang Yen took Yi Fengsheng and walked in front of Bailey Lu and Bailey Qingzhu. Bailey Lu frowned and said, Fang Yen, what are you two whispering about? This matter needs to be resolved by the elders of the Yi family. Can you handle it on behalf of the Yi family? Fang Yen smiled and waved his hand. He said, this matter doesn't need to be resolved by some elder. It needs to be discussed and decided by the two parties involved. Fang Yen looked at Bailey Qingzhu and said, Qingzhu's meaning is already very clear. As brothers, we can also do it. Bailey Qingzhu blushed. She also felt that she had lost face after such a thing happened. The elders of the family still didn't know, but her brother, who had just returned from outside, understood the details. Her brother's personality was insolent. Once he heard of this, he flew into a rage and ran to the Yi family to seek justice for her. Bailey Qingzhu was almost angered to death by her brother's idiocy. With such a ruckus, wouldn't the elders of the two families know? Bailey Lu looked at his sister and said, what do you mean? You want to say that my sister must marry Yi Fengsheng no matter what? No. Yi Fengsheng hurriedly explained. He looked sincerely at Bailey Qingzhu and said, it's me who must marry her no matter what. Yi Fengsheng knelt on one knee and looked into Bailey Qingzhu's eyes. He said, little Zhu, you know my feelings for you. I also understand your feelings for me. To be honest, I wasn't prepared for such a thing to happen. I always felt that I was still a child. Why did I suddenly have a child? After I heard the news, I didn't know what to do. I even hid and didn't dare to pick up your call. I'm a bastard, I deserve to die. I know you must have been very sad at that time. I've let you down. I also felt very sad in my heart. I felt that no matter what, as a man, should have stood up at that time, hugged you and said it's okay. We'll bear this together. But at that time, I didn't do it, and I didn't do it well. I've always wanted to go out and have a look. I've always wanted to go out and explore. I've always wanted to train our Yi family's ferocious tiger fist to the middle stage of tiger. I've always felt that there are still many things that I haven't done. I've always thought that I still have a very, very long time, but you suddenly told me that we have a child. We're going to get married. Yi Fengsheng's eyes reddened. He reached out and held Bailey Qingzhu's small hand tightly. He said, even now, I'm still not prepared, but I'm willing to bear it with you. I want to marry you, I want to make you my wife. I want to raise this child with you. Just now, Fang Yan told me that to stand up and marry the woman you like, to give your child a warm home, is much braver than going to the North Sea, the Gobi Desert, or the extremely cold land, and much more noble. I don't care if it's brave or not, and I don't care if it's noble or not, I just want to do it. Because this is what I think in my heart. I want to marry you, I want to make you my wife, I want to be the child's father. The muscles on Fang Yan's face twitched again and again. This bastard, how can you change your lines so casually? Although the effect is better after you changed it, but, have you ever thought about my feelings? Stepping on your friend's shoulders to show off your own greatness, is this really a man's way of doing things? Please open your eyes and look, your cousin's future wife, Yi Ro, is standing at the side and watching, Fengsheng. Bailey Qingzhu was tricked as expected. She threw herself into Yi Fengsheng's strong embrace. Yi Fengsheng fumbled in his clothes for a while, and finally took out a piece of Maitreya Buddha jade from his neck. He said, men wear guanyin, women wear Buddha. When I was young, my body was very weak, so my ancestor gave me this jade to keep me safe. This is the only valuable thing I have on me. I'll give it to you as my proposal gift. Yi Fengsheng pushed Bailey Qingzhu away, looked at her eyes that were red from crying, and asked, Qingzhu, are you willing to marry me? I am willing. Bailey Qingzhu's tears flowed down in large droplets. As she wiped her tears, she nodded continuously. Thus, Yi Fengsheng put the piece of jade in his hand on Bailey Qingzhu's neck, and then forcefully pulled her back into his embrace. Qingzhu, Fengsheng, just like in the movies, after the male and female leads called each other's names, they hugged each other even more tightly. The rims of Fang Yan's eyes were also red. He walked in front of Yi Ro, reached out and hugged her, saying, I'm so touched, I'm about to cry. Chapter 7:18. Yi Ro was too serious, so Fang Yan was always too frivolous. Yi Ro was cold and indifferent. She was quite shy in her bones. It was impossible for her to take the initiative to express her affection to a man. However, a couple should take the initiative. Therefore, Fang Yan took the role of the main attacker. Yi Ro didn't care about Fang Yan at all. Otherwise, life would be so boring if they both stood there like two unrelated tree stumps. Fang Yan leaned his head on Yi Ro's shoulder and smelled the fresh fragrance from Yi Ro's neck. Yi Ro was very tall and looked thin, but her body was quite plump. Her waist was slender, and her chest was full. Every part of her body was extremely well proportioned and beautiful. Fang Yan hugged Yi Ro's body with both hands and said emotionally, Yi Fengsheng is already a father, but I, as his big brother, am still a virgin. The most important thing in the martial world is face. Am I very shameless now? Yi Ro nodded and said, yes. I don't want to either. Fang Yan sighed and said, I'm getting older and older, and my family is starting to urge me. You want to marry me? Well, why are you asking so directly? If you want to marry me, I will marry you. Yi Ro said with a serious face. Ha ha ha, that's great. I'll go back and prepare now. Fang Yen thought Yi Ro was so cute. How could he not marry such a lovely Yi Ro? And he wanted to marry her now, as soon as possible. Yi sneered and said, he wants to marry me, but he needs the consent of our family. Uncle and the others will definitely not agree. Even if the ancestors help you, it will be useless. Yi Ro glanced at Yi and said, they will agree. Yi Ro didn't say what would happen if they didn't agree. She just said with certainty, they will agree. Fang Yen held Yi Ro's hand tightly and said with a smile, I will definitely marry you, and you also want to marry me by all means. What else in the world can separate us? Mistress. Yi quickly added. Yi. Fang Yen stared at Yi with his teeth clenched. A girl changes 18 times between womanhood and womanhood. The more she changes, the more annoying she becomes. He remembered that she used to support his relationship with Yi Ro. When they met in the village several times, she was very polite to him. When she saw him walking with Yi Ro, she would also tease him with a cheeky smile. Is this girl having a bad sex life recently? Yezi. Yi Ro knew that Yezi was trying to defend her, but what she knew was not a big deal. Have you forgotten our bet just now? Yezi puffed up her cheeks like a goldfish and stared at Fang Yen without blinking. After a long time, she said with difficulty, I'm sorry. After that, he turned around and ran into the courtyard. Bet? Fang Yen looked at Yi Ro in confusion and asked, what did you bet? I said you would definitely persuade Yi Fengsheng to take responsibility. How did you know? Because you are such a person. Yi Ro looked at Fang Yen with pity in her eyes. Otherwise, how could you be so tired? Fang Yen could only hold Yi Ro tighter. This woman's figure was really good. Fang Yen. A stern shout came. Yi Daowen came out of the backyard and saw the guy holding his daughter. His eyes began to burn with murderous intent. He didn't want to blame his baby daughter. It was just that Fang Yen, the bastard, was touching her. The elders of the Yi family didn't come out before because they knew that the Bailey family was angry. It was good to let them vent in the yard. What made them even more embarrassed was that Bailey Lu came to them with his pregnant sister, but Yi Fengsheng, the bastard, didn't dare to show up. If the person involved didn't come out, how could they explain it to others? He also wanted to test Yi Fengsheng. If he only ran away when he encountered this kind of thing, then his future would be nothing more than this. Now that the battle was over and Xiaomei reported that the matter had been solved perfectly, Yi Daowen had to stand up and speak. No matter how well Fang Yen solved it, he was just a junior of the same age as Yi Fengsheng. He was not even a member of the Yi family. It was better to get the approval and blessing of the elders for the marriage of the younger generation. Yi Daowen was thinking about how to handle this matter beautifully. He was in the limelight, and he couldn't let the Bailey family have a grudge. After all, the two families would be considered in-laws in the future. He didn't expect to see such an unsightly scene as soon as he stepped out of the yard. If Fang Yen was holding another girl, Yi Daowen would just think that Fang Yen was a loose and frivolous person. However, the girl in his arms was his daughter, which made Yi Daowen feel particularly offended when he looked over. Fang Yen quickly let go of his left arm, but his right arm stayed behind Yi Ro's waist and gently massaged it. He said with a face full of concern, how do you feel now? In the future, you must pay attention to the fact that your body hasn't fully recovered, and you can't do too intense exercise. Now is not the time for you to rush to practice. Much better, Yi Ro said expressionlessly. She didn't have many expressions on her face. Fang Yen had set up the stage, and she only needed to say a few lines. I used our Fong family's 3 parts 5 mountains hand, which is a kind of treatment method that perfectly combines the qi of Tai Chi with the human body's acupuncture points. You know, Tai Chi belongs to Taoism. Since ancient times, medicine and Taoism have been inseparable. When it comes to taking elixirs to nourish the body, we are better at it. Yi Ro nodded again. Being seen by her father hugging a man, she was really a little embarrassed as a daughter. After all, she was a child from Swallow Dock, and her mind was not so open. It was said that when many young couples made love in the room, their parents would take the initiative to give them condoms for fear of accidents. Poor parents in the world. Fong Yen, what are you doing? Yi Daowen shouted. He was tall, and he came in a fit of anger. He looked fierce and majestic. Massage. Fong Yen explained seriously and said, Ruru was seriously injured last time, and her body won't recover in a short time. She can't do strenuous exercise, and she can't practice martial arts. You have to keep an eye on her. Don't underestimate these sprains. They may develop into hidden dangers in the future. But uncle, don't worry. I used our family's 3 parts 5 mountains hand to push away the blood clots in her body and let the moisture out. She will be fine soon. Yi Daowen stared at Fong Yen with sharp eyes. He naturally didn't believe Fong Yan's nonsense, but he couldn't expose his nonsense. As a father, did he have to check whether his daughter's waist was injured or not? Under Yi Daowen's gaze, Fong Yen finally finished the healthcare treatment in his hand. He clapped his hands and said, well, go back and lie down. If there is nothing important, try not to walk around these 2 days. Only then did Fong Yen turn his eyes to Yi Daowen's face. He said with a smile, Uncle, are you here to deal with the matter of Feng Sheng? Congratulations, the Yi family is going to have another child. Yi Daowen's eyes were cold. No one knew what he was thinking. After a long time, he turned around and walked in the direction of Bai Lilu and Yi Fengsheng. Fengsheng is too young. He did something that caught everyone off guard. This is the fault of our Yi family after all. We will also bear this responsibility. Yi Daowen looked at Bai Lilu and said such words. However, marriage can't be taken lightly. I will personally bring Fengsheng to the Bai family to propose marriage. I also need to discuss the details of the wedding with the elders of your family. Bai Lilu knew Yi Daowen's position in the Yi family. Among the 3 tigers of the Yi family, his position was not the highest, and his martial arts was not the best. However, he was the well-deserved master of the Yi family. He also made decisions on some matters, big or small. He came to say such words to him and even had the intention of apologizing. Thus, Bai Lilu could not wantonly ridicule him. Uncle is right. Marriage matters should be decided by the elders of the 2 families. As an older brother, I can only help my younger sister vent her anger. Bai Lilu glanced at Yi Fengsheng and Bailey Qingzhu, who were still hugging each other and unwilling to separate. He said, I also did some rash things. I hope that uncle will not take it to heart. Yi Daowen smiled and said, what you did was right. If you didn't do it, I would have beaten that brat up. How could I allow him to escape and shrink back from this kind of thing? After talking for a while, Bai Lilu bid farewell to Yi Daowen. Yi Fengsheng, come in here. Wen Nuan, you come with me. Yi Daowen shouted as he left. Yi Wen looked at Fong Yen. Fong Yen smiled and patted her shoulder. He said, go, I also have something to do. Yi Wen nodded and followed behind her father to the backyard. Fong Yen sighed powerlessly and lifted his feet to walk out of the Yi family's house. Fong Yen! Bai Lilu shouted. Fong Yen turned around and looked at Bai Lilu, who had left the Yi family a step earlier but had now appeared behind him. He said, what's the matter? If you want to laugh at me, I advise you to bear with it. Otherwise, I will be very angry. You killed Bai Xiu? Bai Lilu stared coldly at Fang Yen and asked. Fang Yen looked at Bai Lilu thoughtfully and said, "It looks like you don't have a good relationship with that scum Bai Xiu." What? You want to seek revenge for him? I want to seek revenge for him. Bai Lilu shouted coldly. Do you dare to have a good fight with me? Chapter 7:19. Yi Daowen turned around and said to Yi Fengsheng, go to the Great Ancestor with Qingzhu. The Great Ancestor wants to talk to you. Okay. Yi Fengsheng agreed, but his eyes looked at Yi Rou. He was not stupid. He knew that his uncle wanted to talk to Yi Rou, and it should be about her and Fang Yen. He knew Yi Daowen's attitude, and even the attitude of the whole Yi family. But why? Why couldn't my cousin and Fang Yen be together? Yi Daowen instructed, and then he walked towards his study. He didn't ask Yi Rou to go back, so Yi Rou could only follow him into the study. While Bailey Lu was making trouble outside, Yi Daowen was probably reading in the study. When he came back again, the tea in the cup was still steaming, and an ancient book was open on the table. Yi Rou glanced at the title of the book, Notes on Kung Fu of the Southern School. Yi Daowen walked to the windowsill and opened the window. Looking at the gloomy sky outside, he said, I'm afraid it's going to rain again. Yi Rou didn't say anything. She went straight to the bookshelf, took out a book, and casually flipped through it. Yi Daowen held the teacup and took a sip of tea. He looked at his daughter in front of him with a headache. There were thousands of words in his heart, but he didn't know how to say them. They had their own position, and they had to protect the Yi family's position. However, Yi Rou was obviously different from what they thought. She was a girl, and she had a man she liked. She was going to marry him, and as a father, he should give her his blessing. The sad thing was that he couldn't let her walk on that path. He had thought about this problem countless times in his heart. The three brothers had gathered together and discussed their opinions. The decision had been made a long time ago, but they had never had a good talk with Yi Rou. At that time, they all felt that this matter was not urgent, or they hadn't found a more suitable opportunity. But now they had to talk about it. When he walked out just now, he saw Fang Yen holding his daughter in front of others. With Yi Rou's character, she didn't refuse to push Fang Yen away. Yi Daowen knew that it was a little too late. While Yi Daowen was still deliberating over his words, Yi Rou had already spoken first, saying, You can find a reason to convince me. Yi Daowen stared blankly for a moment before drinking another mouthful of fragrant tea. Originally, this top-grade dragon tongue orchid was fragrant, but now, he felt that there was a bitter taste in his mouth. He must be feeling bitter, right? With this in mind, Yi Daowen said, It's impossible for you and Fang Yen. Reason, Yi Rou said. Her eyes were still on the book in her hand, and her voice was very calm. There was no sign of agitation or anger. She seemed to be saying, Give me a reason. As long as you give me a reason, I will be convinced. However, Yi Daowen knew that it was difficult to convince his daughter. His train of thought was interrupted by his daughter's sudden words. Yi Daowen could only reorganize his words and say, Although you failed to climb the heavenly law this time, you're still young. You're the child with the best aptitude in our Yi family. As long as you don't give up, conquering the heavenly law is only a matter of time. Next year? Or the year after? At that time, our Yi family will have a heavenly law expert. Do you know how many years we've been waiting for this? We often say, it's difficult to enter the path of the divine fist. The Bailey family has practiced the fist for generations, but they've never been able to enter the path. We've waited for so many years and hoped for so many years, but there's not a single heavenly law expert. What about our Yi family? Our Yi family's hope is on you, and our Yi family's honor is also on you. The Yi family has a heavenly law expert, and the Yi family once had a heavenly law expert. Others might say that many years ago, the Yi family also had a heavenly law expert. In the end, there was a heavenly law expert. The Yi family needs you, needs this honor, and needs this history. Which of these families who practice martial arts doesn't want to have a heavenly law expert? Just like those scholarly families in ancient times, which family doesn't want their own family to have a scholar? I also know that I'm being too selfish by saying this. As a parent, who doesn't want their children to live well and be happy? However, in my position, I have to consider the interests and reputation of the entire family. It's not just me, but also your grandfathers and uncles. Yi Ro finally raised her head. Her expression was still calm, but there was a hint of mockery in her tone. She looked at her father and said, "Is it because I'm too outstanding? I've said it before. You've always been the most outstanding," Yi Daowen said. On this point, he was also very proud of his daughter. "Because I'm too outstanding, I can't get married and can't leave the Yi family? You can also get married. We've also discussed it. We can find a husband for you. You're outstanding in all aspects, and there are countless young talents who want to enter our Yi family. Your second and third uncles are also looking for someone outside for you. Whether it's from the government department or the military department, you have to find someone who can match you in all aspects. It's okay if you don't match up. As a husband and wife, one has to be strong while the other is weak. If both of them are too strong, it's not good for family harmony. Look for." Yi Ro squinted her eyes and smiled. She said, "Look for? Huh? Can one's own husband be looked for? The past is not the past. Even now in Swallow Dock, there are many couples who have never met before getting married, and they live very well afterward. But, I already have someone I like." Yi Ro said aloud. "That's why I wanted to talk to you. I should have talked to you a long time ago. At that time, I thought that everyone also thought that young people's relationships were not very stable. Maybe they would break up after talking for a while. Now you think we won't break up? I do feel that way. Unfortunately, you couldn't convince me," Yi Ro said. She closed the book in her hand and prepared to leave. Yi Ro stopped and turned to look at her father. She knew that he was also in a difficult position. She also understood his difficulties, but she still said firmly, "You didn't convince me. Fang Yan is not a good match." Yi Daowen said. "Because he's not outstanding enough?" "No, because he's too outstanding." Yi Daowen said, "He's too outstanding and too ambitious. We can't control him, and we might even be controlled by him. We're still alive, and your second uncle and third uncle are also here. We can suppress him. If we're not here, and we're all old. Do you think there's anyone in the next generation of the Yi family who can suppress him? Isn't that good? If we can't suppress him, then let him become one of us, let him become one of our family. Isn't that good? Haven't we discussed this matter already? Your second uncle has talked to him in front of everyone. If he's willing to marry into the Yi family, and if the children you have are willing to have the surname Yi, we will not object to your marriage. We will even raise our hands in approval." But, he refused. He's not willing. The Yi family's expectations of you are too high. Everyone is waiting for you to climb the heavenly Tao. If you succeed, you'll be our Yi family's heavenly Tao expert. If you marry into the Fang family, you'll become the Fang family's heavenly Tao expert. At that time, will there still be people who will say, "Oh, Yi Ro, that's the Yi family's heavenly Tao expert"? Will there be people who think that? But I failed, but one day, you'll succeed. What if I can't succeed in my entire life? Yi Daowen used his palm to rub the rim of the teacup. He sighed softly and said, "You're sulking like this. I know you have grievances in your heart. Saying these things to you makes me feel bad. But, you're still the Yi family's bloodline. You have to think of yourself as a part of the Yi family. If I marry into the Fong family, then I'm no longer a member of the Yi family? Yes, of course. But, you're even more of a member of the Fong family. Yi Daowen clenched the rim of his teacup tightly and said, if, and I'm saying if, a conflict occurs between the Yi family and the Fong family, which side will you stand on? You see, you're also in a difficult position, right? I'll try my best to avoid this kind of thing from happening. It's too difficult. The Yi family has to charge forward, and the Fong family is the same. Just look at what Fong Yen has done. Yi Daowen sighed and said, if you weren't so outstanding, this matter would be very easy to handle. If Fong Yen wasn't so outstanding, this matter would be easy to handle. The key is that the two of you are too outstanding, you know? The teacher wants Fong Yen to be the teacher. He wants Fong Yen to take over his position and become the next teacher of Swallow Dock. Yi Ro thought for a moment and chuckled. She said, so, you think he took your position? I know you also want to be a teacher, so you don't agree to our marriage? It's not that I want to be a teacher. It's that the Yi family needs this teacher. Yi Daowen put down his teacup and rubbed his forehead with some pain. He said, you're my daughter. You're also very smart. There are some things I won't hide from you. Your second uncle is in politics and your third uncle is in the military. I've waited in Swallow Dock for so many years just for this position. I'm waiting for the teacher to retire or grow old. I'm waiting for this position. Could it be that you think I'm inferior to Fong Yen? Inferior to that young fellow? No one can deny that I'm the most suitable person for that position. I've also always been preparing for that position. I've been preparing for so long. I've been preparing for so many years. Perhaps I'm the same age as you. Yi Daowen's voice contained a sense of dignity and dominance. He said in a heavy voice, but, he wants to suppress me. That old fellow wants to suppress me. He wants to suppress our Yi family's Fong Yen. Fong Yen has become his accomplice. Chapter 720. The sky was gray, and dark clouds were rolling. It was as if a huge cloth was about to cover the sky. The wind had stopped, but the rain arrows that could pierce through the darkness didn't fall in time. She felt like she was surrounded by a dome, and it was so oppressive that she couldn't breathe. Although the windows were open, the room still made her feel restless. She had the urge and desire to walk out of the room, to the yard, and into the rain. It would be best if there was a heavy rain. Yi Ro stood at the door and thought for a long time. She said, if Fong Yen can become a teacher of Swallow Dock, I'll be happy. Ro! Yi Daowen shouted. Between him and Fong Yen, his daughter was supporting another man. It made him very uncomfortable as a father. Yi Ro wasn't overwhelmed by her father's aura. She still looked calm. She sighed softly. This choice made her feel very uncomfortable. It's not that Fong Yen is more important than you. You're my father. You gave me everything I have. In my heart, no one is more important than you, Yi Ro said softly, as if she was explaining something. But Fong Yen is indeed more suitable than you. He's capable, intelligent, and selfless. Or rather, he doesn't have too much selfishness. He wants Swallow Dock to be Swallow Dock. He respects it, and doesn't want to use it to achieve his own achievements and ambitions. That's because he hasn't reached that position yet. When he becomes a teacher of Swallow Dock, when he has enough power, his ambition will be greater than anyone else's. He won't be able to suppress it. Anyone in that position would have done the same thing. What about a teacher? A teacher is still a teacher. A former teacher is still a teacher. What makes you think I can't be a teacher? What makes you think I can't be a teacher like Long Qinxiang? Because you want too much. What about Fang Yen? His thoughts are more complicated, and his methods are more ruthless. But he's a good person, Yi Rou said softly. Even if he wants something, he'll do it in a righteous way. He won't hurt those innocent people. It's just a one-sided story. Also, Yi Wenrou turned around and looked at Yi Daowen's face that was dark from anger. She said, "You said that you waited for many years, you said that you stayed in Swallow Dock for the position of teacher. What if Bai Xiu was still alive? If Bai Xiu was still alive, how would you treat him?" "Impudent!" Yi Daowen shouted in a stern voice. "There are many smart people in this world," Yi Rou said fearlessly. Her voice was still soft, as if she was worried that someone outside would hear her. "You're not the smartest person, and neither am I," Yi Rou sighed again, opened the door, and walked out. Boom! A loud clap of thunder came from the distant horizon. Lightning streaked across the sky, lighting up Yi Wen's beautiful face. Her expression was calm, but her eyes were turbulent. She walked to the courtyard and stood in the small courtyard, looking up at the dark sky. Walala! The torrential rain poured down on her face and body. Yi Rou stretched out her hand. The raindrops fell on her palm and splashed away. She enjoyed this moment of comfort and coolness very much. It was as if all the hair on her body had opened up. She knew that only the rain arrows could tear apart the endless darkness and boredom. Clang! Fang Yan's body was smashed heavily against the bluestone wall. His back was burning with pain, and all the bones in his body were about to break. His body slid down the smooth wall. Before he could slide to the ground, Bai Lilu had already rushed over and punched Fang Yan's chest. Swish! The fist passed through the rainforest, and countless raindrops were sent flying. The flying raindrops became indestructible bead arrows. The beads hit the wall and made a pa-pa sound. Then, they exploded and turned into countless denser and finer raindrops. Many raindrops fell on Fang Yan's body, but this kind of injury was meaningless to him. If he was an ordinary person, his chest and stomach might be red and purple, but for Fang Yan, it was nothing more than scratching an itch through his boots. Fang Yan's body was tense, and his back was tightly pressed against the stone wall, as if he was going to squeeze the stone wall until it burst. When his body was ready, he shouted, and his legs suddenly sprang up. He punched toward Bai Lilu's fist. Their fists collided, and then collided again, and again. Bai Lilu's godly fist was invincible. He had extremely high attainments in fists, and his strength was strong and fierce. Every punch had the power to split mountains and split stones. Although Fang Yan majored in Tai Chi, he did not use the softness of Tai Chi to overcome the hardness. Instead, he used force to meet force with force. Therefore, when their fists collided, the burst of strength was particularly shocking. Bang! Bang! Both of their bodies leaped into the air, and after a quick 7 punches and 12 kicks, their bodies began to fall. In the process of falling, the two of them were still entangled and did not separate. Bai Lilu punched toward Fang Yan's face, but Fang Yan turned his fist into a claw and grabbed Bai Lilu's wrist. Bai Lilu waved his fist to dodge, and Fang Yan buckled again. Bai Lilu dodged again, and Fang Yan buckled again. The two of them fought dozens of times in a row, and finally, Fang Yan seized the opportunity. As long as his claws touched Bai Lilu's skin, Bai Lilu could not escape. Fang Yan's body directly hit Bai Lilu's chest, and then with a shoulder, Bai Lilu's body flew out. Bang! Bai Lilu's body fell on the bluestone floor, and then he slid all the way back. The rainwater gathered on the ground was cut by his body, and it flowed in front and on both sides. Crack! Bai Lilu punched out, and a big hole was smashed on the bluestone floor by him. Half of his arm went into the hole. With his arm as the center, he turned his body 360 degrees in 2 circles, and only then did he completely remove Fang Yan's rhinoceros hit. With a punch, he stood up again. Walala! The rainwater poured down, and Fang Yan and Bai Lilu's faces and bodies were all wet. Blood oozed out of Bai Lilu's face, and it was instantly washed away by the rainwater on his face. When it oozed out again, it was washed away again. Therefore, it looked like his face was clean, and there were no wounds. Fang Yan grinned and said, "Do you still want to fight? I just warmed up, how can I not fight? Your face is broken." Fang Yan pointed to the wound on his face and said, "Cut the crap." Pa! Bai Lilu's shoes stepped on the floor, and the rainwater on the ground was pushed away by his powerful inner force. Then, his body rushed straight in the direction of Fang Yan. While sprinting, his right hand clenched into a fist. His fist faintly glowed with blue light, and the wet back of his hand instantly became dry. The rain was still light, but the pervasive raindrops splashed everywhere when they fell around his fist. Even more raindrops didn't have a chance to fly out, and as soon as they came into contact with the blue light, they immediately melted into transparent gas. He was like a fierce horse, and his fist energy was everywhere. Ha! Bai Lilu snorted and punched at Fang Yan's chest. This was a straight punch, and it was also a fair and square punch. He came straight at Fang Yan, and his punch was aimed at the important part of Fang Yan's body, which was also the part that must be saved. Star-Shattering Fist was the most powerful punch in the Bailey family's Divine Fist, and it was also the most difficult punch to practice. Fang Yan had heard from Bailey Lu that when the Star-Shattering Fist was used, the entire arm would turn green. This was because all the energy in the body was gathered in that arm. A person's body might not be able to withstand the boundless energy and explode. However, the people of the Bailey family practiced skin and bone since they were young, and their bodies were extremely strong. Only their tyrannical and strong bodies could withstand such a method of exertion of strength qi. Bai Lilu had actually learned the Star-Shattering Fist. Soon, Fang Yan shook his head. Bai Lilu's fist only glowed with blue light, but not the whole fist had turned blue. Moreover, the Star-Shattering Fist not only made the fist turn blue, but also the whole arm and even the face would turn blue. Bai Lilu should have only touched the surface of the Star-Shattering Fist, and it would take a long time for him to really master it. However, at his age, he was already considered a genius. Perhaps the curse of the Divine Fist being difficult to enter the path would be broken by him. Fang Yan did not dodge. He bent his body slightly, stretched out his hands, and waved them in the rain. His left foot was the center, and his right foot was drawing a circle in the rain. His hands waved faster and faster, and the rain from the sky was slapped away by his sleeves and palms. By the time his body turned into an illusory shadow, not a single drop of rain could fall on his body. His body became a transparent state of vacuum. Not a feather could fall, not a leaf could be added. Those who could practice to this level could already be called Grandmaster of Tai Chi. When Fang Yan waved Tai Chi, even the heavy rain could not fall on him. He was simply a monster that everyone feared. Bai Lilu sprinted in the rain, and his fist was getting closer and closer to Fang Yan's chest. In the process of running, the color of Bai Lilu's fist became darker, and the green light gradually converged, slowly shrinking into his flesh. Star-Shattering Fist, this was the real Star-Shattering Fist. I've been tricked. Fang Yan was shocked. Bai Lilu, this bastard, actually hid his strength at this critical moment. He wanted to give Fang Yan a fatal blow at this moment. Pa! Bai Lilu punched Fang Yan's chest, and Fang Yan's body flew out. Chapter 721. The 100 Miles Godly Fist used bravery as its bones and strength as its flesh. It was brave and unyielding when fighting with others, fearless. In the past, when Fang Yan and Bai Lilu fought, they were fighting to the death. It looked like they were fighting with their lives on the line. Neither of them would hold back. Fang Yan never thought that Bai Lilu would learn the star-shattering fist after not seeing him for a while. Fang Yan never thought that Bai Lilu would learn to hide his strength during the fight. Was this the Bai Lilu he knew? Was this the Bai Lilu family's man? Pfft! Fang Yan despised him in his heart. Bai Lilu's punch was unstoppable. Before the punch arrived, the qi came first. Fang Yan's body bent and flew backward, as if he had been struck by a powerful force and collided with a powerful force. Bai Lilu's body was still in the charging position. His body was still flying in the air, and his fist was still in the forward position. On the surface, it seemed that Bai Lilu had a big advantage. Fang Yan was sent flying by his punch. But Bai Lilu knew that this guy was using Tai Chi's drunken crane riding the wind to reduce his strength. When he punched, it was like hitting a pile of cotton wool. The more strength he exerted, the faster the cotton wadding retreated, but, could a stone hurt the cotton wool? That was obviously impossible. Drunken crane riding the wind, what a hateful movement. Bai Lilu thought angrily. He thought of the Fang family's genius martial artist, Mo Qingdi. When he was at his peak, his tendons were cut off by the dragon god and he fell to rock bottom. He lived on wine and sleep every day. But at that time, he created this desireless movement technique, drunken crane riding the wind. Everyone knew that he went to the cold land to look for the ice dragon's bloodline. Many people were suspicious and sympathetic of this behavior. Ice dragon? That was a legendary monster. How was it possible to find it? They knew that Mo Qingdi might never come back. A prodigy of a generation had fallen from grace just like that. People couldn't help but sigh in regret. When Mo Xiaodi was at his peak, Bai Lilu's target had always been him. He had thought that one day, he would be able to fight against such a master. But now, it seemed that he would never have the chance again. Logically speaking, Bai Lilu's punch, which had been accumulating power for a long time, should have missed, because he didn't even touch Fang Yan's body. However, he did not give up. He did not even change his move. His body flew even faster, drenched in the torrential rain and facing the cold wind. His entire palm had turned green. Although the green color was faint, it proved that he had comprehended the star-shattering fist for some time. Fang Yan retreated and rushed forward. When the force of the leap was exhausted, Fang Yan's body began to fall, and so did Bai Lilu's body. As soon as Fang Yan's toes touched the ground, Bai Lilu charged towards Fang Yan's face in a condescending manner. *Pa*. The fist incinerated the rainwater and smashed towards Fang Yan's head. Fang Yan's feet were like a pair of ice skates gliding on the water, and Bai Lilu's body was also chasing after him. The whistling of the wind, the pitter-patter of the rainwater, and the heavy breathing of people mingled together. Fang Yan retreated with drunken crane riding the wind in order to reduce the force of Bai Lilu's punch. Now, Fang Yan realized that this idea was too idealistic. Bai Lilu's star-shattering fist was ready but not released. Until now, the majestic force was still gathered on his fist and arm. In other words, if Fang Yan did not fight with him, his punch would always be a huge threat to Fang Yan. Fang Yan raised his hands and used the hand supporting the sky move. Bai Lilu threw out a punch and smashed it towards his palm. Bang! The fist and palm collided, making a crisp sound of impact. Gotcha! Fang Yan's feet sank, and both of his legs stepped into the bluestone floor at the same time, all the way to his knees. The cracks on the stone floor were still extending outwards, and the sound of stones cracking could be heard in the surroundings. Gotcha! Bai Lilu punched, but he did not stop there. With the help of the rebound force, his body leaped into the air, and then he landed again. Once again, he clenched his fist and punched towards Fang Yan's head. Fang Yan raised his hand again to block. Bang! The fist and palm collided again. Gotcha! Fang Yan's legs continued to sink. Bailey Lu's body rebounded into the air again, and he once again swung his star-shattering fist from above. Kacha, kacha, kacha. Fang Yan's body was like a wooden stake, being hit by a huge hammer again and again into the depths of the ground. Fang Yan's body sank, and both of his legs were almost completely submerged in the bluestone. He could feel the sharp stone fragments cutting his little brother between his legs. Bailey Lu's body flew into the air again, then he clenched his fists, and with strong winds and heavy rain, he rushed towards Fang Yan. This was the last blow. It was also a fatal blow. Walala, his body fused with the torrential storm, like a blurry shadow, a bolt of lightning that was full of lethality. Bang, bang, Bailey Lu punched again. Fang Yan raised his face, letting the bean-sized raindrops hit his cheeks, eyebrows, and eyes. The sky was gray, and covered by the curtain of rain. He could not see Bailey Lu's figure and expression at all. However, he could clearly see his fist, his cyan fist, which contained a violent power, was swung forward. Go to hell. Bailey Lu roared. Go to hell. Fang Yan also roared at the same time. This time, he did not use his hands to hold up the sky, but when Bailey Lu's fist was about to hit his head, he clenched his right fist and punched out. Bang! Bailey Lu's body was like a rocket that was launched, flying towards the boundless sky at a speed that was 10 times faster than when he came. Pfft! Fang Yan spat out a mouthful of blood, and his body fell weakly to the ground. The rain was a little lighter, and it pattered on this seemingly fresh world. The edges of the roof tiles were washed clean, and the leaves were bright. The dozen or so large vats in the courtyard had already been filled with rainwater. The raindrops that fell into the vats only caused ripples in the water. Bailey Lu only felt sweetness in his throat, and quickly drank a mouthful of strong alcohol. He did not expect that the strong smell of alcohol did not wash away the vomit, but choked it out. Pfft! Bailey Lu spat out a mouthful of blood, which was filled with the smell of alcohol. This was the third time he spat out blood. Fang Yan did not even look at him. He lay on the old rattan chair under the eaves, drinking, and his eyes were fixed on the ripples in the big vats. The courtyard belonged to the old drunkard, and the rattan chair was naturally the old drunkard's rattan chair. Of course, the alcohol they were drinking was also the alcohol brewed by the old drunkard. The old drunkard was moved by the fact that Qinya Bing died in the small courtyard, and broke all the wine vats in his courtyard. On the day when Fang Yixing died tragically and returned to the village, the old drunkard brewed a few vats of shadaozi for himself. Before he finished those vats of shadaozi, he went to the extremely cold place. Therefore, shadaozi became Fang Yan's shadaozi. What exactly happened? Bailey Lu stared at Fang Yan with a face full of unwillingness, and said, I felt that you did not use the heart of Tai Chi. Did it become a dead fetus again? Without the heart of Tai Chi, how could your punch send me flying? What kind of kung fu did you use? It was not the first time they had fought. Bailey Lu knew Fang Yan's strengths and weaknesses, and Fang Yan also knew Bailey Lu's limits. However, he could not understand the way he fought today, or the punch he threw out to counterattack. He used the star-breaking fist, the most powerful star-breaking fist among the 100 miles godly fists. Even this move could not subdue Fang Yan, and it could not even subdue Fang Yan who had lost the heart of Tai Chi, the Bailey family's godly fist. Was it still a godly fist? Could it be that he had been deceived by his family? You deserve it. Fang Yan glanced at him and said with a sneer. He did not bother to explain too much to him. The current Bailey Lu was not at the same level as him at all. If he wanted to fight in the future, he would fight his father or his grandfather. As for Bailey Lu himself, he was too inexperienced. Bailey Lu smiled bitterly and said, You don't really think I'm here to avenge Bai Xiu, do you? Ever since I was a child, I've always disliked that guy. He's a wild child from the outside. Just because he's with Master, he thinks he's some big shot. If you hadn't killed him first, I would have come to him and taught him a lesson on how to be a man. Then why didn't you do it earlier? Fang Yen said mockingly. At that time, the star-breaking fist hadn't been mastered, right? Bailey Lu was a little embarrassed. He drank another mouthful of liquor and said, "Bai Xiu. Is he really dead?" "Dead," Fang Yen said straightforwardly. "It's good that he's dead." Bailey Lu sighed softly. "Although I used to think he was annoying, I didn't expect him to be so vicious. Such a guy actually appeared in our Swallow Fort." Master, in the end, Bailey Lu did not go too deep on the topic of Master. He looked at Fang Yen and said, "I heard that you came back to force the Emperor to abdicate." "It's not really to force the Emperor to abdicate. I just want to find an answer," Fang Yen said. "Have you found the answer?" Fang Yen shook his head lightly and said, "I'm still looking." "If there's a need, you're willing to help?" "I mean if there's a need for you," Bailey Lu said. Fang Yen squinted his eyes and smiled. He said, "Of course there's a need." Bailey Lu looked at Fang Yen with a puzzled expression. Fang Yen raised the bowl of liquor in his hand and said, to the old drunkard. Bailey Lu did not dare to call Mo Qingdi an old drunkard like Fang Yen. Although Mo Qingdi was not there, he still said respectfully, to Elder Mo. Fang Yen drank all the xiaodao in the bowl in one gulp. Gasping for breath, he said, "Why did you come back this time?" "To marry Yi Ro," Bailey Lu said. Chapter 722. And then? Fang Yen asked. His voice blended with the falling raindrops and was masked by the whistling wind, making it almost impossible to hear him clearly. However, Bailey Lu heard it clearly. He could even hear the emotion contained in the word, "and then." He was angry, and he cared a lot about it, but he pretended to not care. And then? Probably the same as Yi Fengsheng. The elders of the family go to the Yi family to propose marriage and give generous betrothal gifts. First, they choose a close date to drink a glass of engagement wine, and then choose an auspicious day to complete the wedding. Enter the bridal chamber, give birth to a child. Isn't that the process of marriage? After everything is done, the two people have to spend the rest of their lives together. "I won't do anything to you." Fang Yen took a big gulp of wine and said with a smile, "Yi Ro will kill you." "Yes." Bailey Lu drank up the shadaozi in one breath, wiped the wine stain on the corner of his mouth, and said, "I'll drink another bowl. I can't drink such strong shadaozi outside, and I can't drink the shadaozi brewed by Senior Mo outside." Fang Yen ignored him. He ran to the wine jar in the room and took out another big bowl. He sat back on the small stool under the eaves and continued the topic. He looked at Fang Yen and said, "Yi Ro will kill me. I know Yi Ro will kill me, and they also know Yi Ro will kill me. But why do they still want me to marry Yi Ro?" Fang Yen looked at Bailey Lu with bright eyes and a little smile. He asked, "Do you like Yi Ro?" "I asked them why do they still want me to marry Yi Ro?" Bailey Lu said angrily. "I asked first. Do you like Yi Ro?" Fang Yen asked again, and the smile on his face began to widen. Bailey Lu thought for a moment and said, "If you have to find a marriage partner, there is nothing wrong with Yi Ro." "Well, I admit that I like Yi Ro. You also know that among our group of friends, there aren't many who don't like her. At that time, we were a group of men hunting birds in the mountains and fishing in the water, but Yi Ro never played with us. Although we said she was unsociable and didn't like to play with such a girl, we actually hoped that she could be with us. If she inadvertently glanced at us, everyone's heart would pound violently, and their voices would become much louder, just like a group of little roosters that had been injected with hormones." Bai Lilu picked up the wine bowl and took a sip. He felt the strong aroma of the wine, but his eyes were fixed on the water droplets that continuously dripped from the eaves into the pool. The water droplets were like a thick transparent thread, creating small ripples in the small pool. If the water droplets were alive, would they merge with each other or be swallowed by the pool? Were their hearts filled with joy? At that time, we were all very envious and jealous of you. We wanted to play with Yi-Ro, but we didn't know what reason to get close to her. You are different. Because of the competition every year, you two were born to be enemies. When a group of us stands together, when she looks over, her gaze will most likely be on you, although her gaze might not be kind. You can also go up and provoke her or even insult her, and then wait for her to retaliate. In fact, we are all envious of you. Fang Yan nodded, looked at Bai Lilu, and said, so, you like Yi-Ro, so you won't object to this marriage. Even if you object, you won't object so fiercely. Yi-Ro has extraordinary skills, and she may become the youngest elite in the Tao of Heaven in Swallow Fort. The Yi family is now like the sun in the sky. If you two get married, the Bailey family will also benefit a lot. Not only the Bailey family, as long as the Yi family spreads the news that Yi-Ro is looking for a man, the other families in Swallow Dock will probably rush to marry her. As you said, if you want to find a woman to marry, who doesn't want to marry Yi-Ro? After a pause, Fang Yan said, of course, it won't be easy for you to take advantage of this. The Yi family will never let Yi-Ro go. So, did they ask you to be their son-in-law? Bailey Lu grinned and said, we can do this, but you can't. I have an elder brother and a younger brother. I have 4 or 5 cousins, and more than a dozen brothers and sisters. Even if I, Bailey Lu, sacrifice for my family or for my beauty, it's not a big deal. For example, Li Xiaotian has an elder brother, Li Xiaolong. Li Xiaolong is so powerful that he can support the Li family. It's not a bad thing for Li Xiaotian to marry into the Yi family and be the peace ambassador between the two families. You don't consider my and Yi-Ro's opinions. This business is really good. Fang Yan sighed and said. What business? You put it so bluntly. This is true love. Although Yi-Ro doesn't necessarily love us, we love Yi-Ro. Then, let's go back to my first question, Fang Yan said with a smile. Aren't you afraid that Yi-Ro will kill you? What about you? Bailey Lu looked at Fang Yan with a bowl of wine in his hand and said, like you said, you won't do anything? Yi-Ro is responsible for killing people, and I'm responsible for digging holes. I can't bear to let Yi-Ro bear such a heavy workload alone. Look, I know it's like this. If I only consider Yi-Ro's opinion, I think I can give it a try. He thought, I'm not worse than you, Fang Yan. If I make love to you, Yi-Ro may fall in love with me in the future. But if I only consider your opinion, we're brothers. I've helped you. My family forced me to do this. You can't just kill me with a sword. But if I have to consider your and Yi-Ro's opinion at the same time, I'm afraid no one dares to accept this marriage, right? The weight of you and Yi-Ro together is no less than that of those rich and powerful families. You are a smart man, Fang Yan said as he looked at Bailey Lu with a bowl of wine in his hand. Come on, let me toast you. Because I didn't steal your woman? No. Fang Yan shook his head and said, because you made the right choice. You should know that I will really kill people. I've already killed Bai Xiu. Bailey Lu clinked his bowl with Fang Yan's and said, some people are not easy to kill. Then kill them slowly, Fang Yan said. Anyway, I'm not too busy now. Once upon a time, there was a mountain called Monkey Mountain. There was a Taoist temple on the mountain, and there were a group of old monks in the temple. The Taoist temple was located on the mountainside of Monkey Mountain, built against the cliff. Half of the Taoist temple was suspended in the air. From a distance, it looked like it was flying in the clouds. Because of the rain, the mountain was blurred and the fog was rolling. The entire Taoist temple was shrouded by the rain and the fog. The Taoist priests in the temple were doing their evening classes in the One Mind Temple. There were also a few old Taoist priests in the kitchen, preparing dinner for the Taoist temple. Such a tranquil and comfortable scene, every day passed in this manner. In the past few decades, it was rarely broken by anything. However, today was not an ordinary day. On the cliff of the Taoist temple, a black figure was climbing along the cliff. His posture was calm and his speed was fast. He looked as if he was walking on flat ground. From the bottom to the top, he was like an agile old monkey or a soaring eagle. His body was almost flying toward the outer wall of the Taoist temple. The tips of his feet lightly touched the protruding but precipitous rocks, and then he stepped on a large rock even higher up. When his body reached the top of the void suspension temple, his body paused for a moment. He lowered his voice and looked around. Then his body jumped down like a bat and quietly entered the window of the void suspension temple. There was no one in the room, nor was there any sound. He could not even hear a person's breathing or pulse. This was something he had already inquired about when he came in. He did not stop and continued to climb until he reached the door of a locked room on the top floor. He pressed his palm on the golden lock, and his inner strength burst forth. With a slight ding, the copper lock automatically bounced open. He held the lock in his hand, pushed open the door, and entered. The room was dark, but it was not a problem for the black-clothed man. He didn't even need a flashlight to walk around the house freely. For martial artists of their level, night vision was not a very impressive skill. There were rows of bookshelves in front of him, and there were all kinds of books and ancient books on them. The room was filled with a strong scholarly atmosphere, but there was no smell of decay. Instead, there was a faint fragrance. The black-clothed man reached out and quickly searched through the books, looking for a place where the treasure could be hidden. In a very inconspicuous small house in the Taoist temple, a young Taoist was sitting on a chair, drowsily sleeping. Perhaps he was startled by the thunder outside, but he suddenly opened his eyes and wiped the saliva from the corner of his mouth. Looking at the surveillance image on the TV screen in front of him and the figure busy in the dark room, the young Taoist became excited and ran towards the one-hearted sect view next door. Lowering his voice, he shouted, "Master, Master! Grand Master, someone's here to steal the Tai Chi painting again. Someone's here to steal the Tai Chi painting again." Chapter 723. The sky was dark and misty, and the rain was hazy. The old parasol tree in the courtyard was washed clean by the rain, and the large leaves of the parasol tree showed the green color of their youth, like green jadeite leaves that had just bloomed. There was an open vat under the Chinese parasol tree. The water in the broken vat was already full, and the new water flowed out, flowing into the stream next to the courtyard. Tiny ripples appeared on the surface of the water because of the newly fallen raindrops. Occasionally, large ripples would appear, stirring up the water in the vat, as if there was an invisible monster hiding at the bottom of the vat. However, it didn't show its head, and there was no way to see its true appearance. Splash, a big red fish emerged from the water, opening its mouth and spitting out bubbles, catching the rootless water falling from the sky. It seemed as if something had bitten its tail, and then it suddenly dove into the bottom of the pond. Splash, water splashed everywhere, and the water swayed even more violently. With the heart of the water as the center, ripples began to spin in the vat. The black shadow was still searching in the room, flipping through the precious ancient books and then throwing them to the side. His movements were extremely fast, but he almost didn't make any sound. The room was still pitch black, and other than the flickering light from his pupils, it was difficult to see any other light. Swoosh, a cool breeze blew toward his back. If it was someone else, they would just think that there was a breeze blowing, and their back was slightly cold. However, for the black-robed man, even the slightest movement in the surrounding dozens of feet could not escape his perception. He didn't make any movements, but his body actually disappeared from where he stood. Crack, countless fine threads of the horsetail whisk slapped the bookshelf, and the bookshelf was cut into countless pieces. That wasn't a natural wind, but a breeze caused by the attack of the horsetail whisk. After missing its attack, the horsetail whisk flicked, and it once again chased after the black-robed man not far away. This time, the direction of the horsetail whisk's attack was that pair of bright eyes. In this dark space, the pair of eyes were a little too bright. Swoosh, there was another faint breeze. The person holding the horsetail whisk leaped up, and his Taoist robe opened, but there was no sound. His appearance, his attack, and his attack, all of them had not made a single sound. He didn't even speak. Even his breathing was so soft that it couldn't be heard. This person was using the Taoist's turtle breathing technique. His internal organs were like a turtle in a dormant state, but his body still maintained a powerful offensive ability. ****, the black-clothed man's body disappeared, and the horsetail whisk struck the bookshelf again. The bookshelf could not withstand such gravity, and with a crack, a wooden board fell off. Then, the entire bookshelf began to collapse, making a crashing sound. What was different was that this time, the direction in which the man in black disappeared was not to dodge or retreat. Instead, he took the initiative to greet the horsetail whisk. "Evil creature, you're courting death." The middle-aged Taoist priest was infuriated by the black-clothed man's arrogant and conceited behavior. He bellowed and suddenly withdrew his horsetail whisk. Then, he swung it towards the black-clothed man's chest. This time, the horsetail whisks were no longer gathered together. Instead, they were scattered and flew towards the man in black like countless flying needles. The fine threads on the horsetail whisk actually broke free from the handle and became a dense mass of deadly hidden weapons that covered all the important acupuncture points on the man's chest and face. "Ignorant child, don't scold me." The black-clothed man scolded, and at the same time, he swung his palm out. If there were bystanders, they would definitely be amused by this scene. The black-clothed man came to steal someone's treasure, but after being caught red-handed, he did not want to let others scold him. This was truly tyrannical. What was even funnier was that he called a middle-aged Taoist priest a ignorant child. Whose child would grow up so quickly? This humble Taoist is Fragrant Flower Pavilion's book reader, Qing Xian. Who are you? The Taoist sect had a saying, 3 secrets and 7 mysteries. The 3 secrets were the 3 top experts of the Ji generation, while the 7 mysteries were the heroes of the Xian generation. The 3 secrets and 7 mysteries each had their own strengths, and they were the backbone of the Taoist sect. 3 secrets and 7 mysteries. Let's see if you're fishing for fame. As the black-clothed man spoke, the wind from his large palm swept away the sword-like hard needles. Dong dong dong, the needles pierced into the wall or bookshelf, making dull sounds. Qing Xian was shocked. It was very common to use the strength of one's palm to deflect hidden weapons. However, what he swung out were countless hairs of the horsetail whisk, and he used the powerful technique of sweeping away an army of 1,000. Receiving 1 hidden weapon was not considered a skill, and receiving 3 to 5 hidden weapons was understandable. However, how much strength did one need to slap out thousands of hairs at the same time? Who was this person? How did he have such strength? While Qing Xian was shocked, he already held the horsetail whisk and moved towards the black-clothed man. After the black-clothed man swatted away the hairs, his momentum did not decrease. He ignored the sharp handle in Qing Xian's hand, and his palm landed on Qing Xian's chest. Puff! Qing Xian immediately spat out a mouthful of blood, and his body flew backwards. Clang! His body smashed heavily onto a row of bookshelves, causing them to topple over. This triggered a domino effect, and the bookshelves were also smashed down. Dust flew everywhere in the room, and books fell to the ground, making a hissing sound. Puff! After Qing Xian's body fell to the ground, he spat out another mouthful of blood. He held his chest and asked, "Who are you?" Actually, when he asked this question, the answer was already very clear. Because in the entire Huaxia, there were very few people who could send him flying with one palm, the black-clothed man did not answer Qing Xian's question. Instead, he walked towards Qing Xian step by step, and asked in a low voice, "Where is the Tai Chi painting?" The black-clothed man's theft had been discovered, and he had caused such a huge commotion. Not only did he not escape immediately, but he also continued to ask about the treasure. "You are also here for the Tai Chi painting. Who are you? Where is the Tai Chi painting?" The black-clothed man had already walked in front of Qing Xian, and he looked down at him. "Don't waste time. If I attack again, you will already be dead. You should have been killed by me just now. How can Qing Xian? How can I be threatened by evil people?" Qing Xian held his chest and laughed coldly. He wanted to stand up, but his internal organs were seriously injured, and he could not move. "It's just death. I am a monk. Why would I care about this?" "Then you can go and die," the black-clothed man said expressionlessly. As he spoke, he lifted his foot and was about to step down. "Immeasurable heavenly venerate." An old voice came through the window. The voice was loud and clear, like thunder. It was so loud that it made one's eardrums buzz. "Mr. Black Dragon, you have the time to come to Immeasurable Temple as a guest. Why are you doing such a secretive thing? Why are you fighting with a junior?" The black-clothed man glanced at Qing Xian and knew that he could not step down anymore. The leader of the group had stood up, but he still attacked an injured junior. It was really embarrassing. "Old Taoist Tai Chong, you are not dead yet," the black-clothed man shouted outside. The moment he spoke, the buzzing in his ears immediately disappeared. Using sound to attack the enemy and using sound to subdue the enemy was the principle of imbuing strength into one's voice. For experts of their level, there was nothing in the world that could not injure or subdue the enemy. "Who cares about life and death?" the old voice said with a smile. "Since Mr. Black Dragon is here, would you like to come out and meet me?" "Why not?" the black-clothed man said aloud. He slapped the tightly locked window of the house with his palm. The window made of rosewood shattered into sawdust and scattered in all directions. The black-clothed man's feet did not move. He did not need any leverage, but he had already flown out of the window. Cha, his feet landed on a bluestone in the courtyard. The bluestone did not move at all. Not even the rainwater beneath his feet was disturbed. Black clothes and a black hat. His entire body was shrouded in darkness. His face could not be seen clearly. Even his figure could not be seen clearly. He stood there motionless, but his body seemed to be wrapped in a layer of gauze, wrapped in a layer of fog. It was illusory and real, and one could never find his true body. In the courtyard, dozens of Taoist priests gathered around. There were old Taoist priests with white beards, and there were also some young and naive Taoist priests. They looked at the man in black who was hiding in the wind and rain with a common enemy. There was no joy nor sorrow, only some anger spreading in their hearts. They did not provoke anyone, but there was always someone who came to their house to steal things and hurt their loved ones. This kind of thing would not feel good to anyone. Were monks not human? However, they did not act rashly. Because the person standing in the black shadow was called the Black Dragon, the most elusive and most unfathomable black dragon, one of the 3 divine dragons of Huaxia. Even though they were experienced and knowledgeable, they had to say, the guest who came to visit today was also a legendary figure. In the middle of the crowd of Taoist priests stood an old man in a light-colored Taoist robe. The old man's hair and beard were all black, and there were not many wrinkles on his face. However, his voice was extremely old, like an old monster that had lived for hundreds of years. The old man straightened his back and stood in the middle of the crowd. He looked at the black-clothed divine dragon and said, "Which Tai Chi diagram do you want? Treasures of heaven and earth belong to virtuous people." The black dragon said calmly. Even though he was surrounded by so many people, he was not afraid at all. "You have no use for it. I will take it myself." "If you can't take it, doesn't that prove that you are a person without virtue?" Taoist Tai Chong joked. "I haven't taken it yet." "How do you know I can't take it?" "I'm afraid you can't take it," Tai Chong said with great certainty. "The world is so big. If I want to leave, who can stop me? If I want to come, who can stop me?" The black-robed man said with a sonorous voice. Chapter 724. The world is so big, if I want to leave, who can stop me? If I want to come, who can stop me? The black-clothed man's voice was powerful, and it sounded like he was full of confidence when he said this. And he stood there with his head held high, fearless of the wind and rain, looking like a majestic idiot. "Such heavy rain, can't you just stand under the eaves for a while?" It had to be said that some martial arts masters did things to show off, and it was still very objectionable. Did standing in the courtyard with an umbrella make people think that you're not a black dragon or a peerless master? Not friendly at all. "Black dragon, don't be presumptuous. My immeasurable temple is the orthodox Taoism. How dare you come here and behave atrociously? Are you trying to bully my immeasurable temple? Let me meet him." Immeasurable Temple had always been known as the Orthodox Taoism, the foundation of Taoism, and the place where many strong masters came from. Sect Master Tai Chong, Junior Brother Tai Su, and Tai Ying, the three great celestial masters had already entered the heavenly Tao realm, and their martial arts had reached perfection. Because these people were old and had high status, they were dedicated to Taoism, and almost did not get involved in worldly affairs. Therefore, the outside world was familiar with the 3 secrets and 7 mysteries. Fang Yan's Taoist master Tian Jizi was one of the 3 secrets, and he was likely to take over the Taoism palm seal. Tao addict Song Zaniang was about the same age as Tian Jizi, but he had a very high seniority, and was the last disciple of the previous Taoism sect master. Fu Xing Tai Su was in seclusion and did not come out for several years, and Tai Ying was in the Monkey Mountains cave of no solution. Only Tai Chong could suppress the black dragon. Tai Chong did not say anything, but the descendants of Taoism around him had already started to retaliate. Although they were monks, they had profound cultivation and were proud and arrogant. Today, they were bullied by the black dragon, and they were already sulking. Now that they heard the black dragon's arrogant words, they naturally wanted to rush up and fight him for 300 rounds. The black dragon sneered and said, "The 3 secrets and 7 mysteries are well known in the outside world, and I think they should have some real skills. But I just met a guy in the library who called himself Qing Xian. I think he should be one of the 7 mysteries." In the end, he was slapped by me in 1 round. Although he has some backbone, what's the use? Didn't he still fall to the ground with a slap? "Black Dragon, how dare you bully junior apprentice brother Qing Xian? I'm Yu Xian, I'll fight you. Everyone, let's get rid of this old fellow. He's really going too far. Mr. Black Dragon is a guest from afar. Everyone, don't be rude." Taoist Taichung said. The old Taoist priest Taichung's prestige was extremely high. As soon as he opened his mouth to speak, there was not the slightest bit of noise in the courtyard. Taoist Taichung looked at the black dragon and said, "If you are a friendly guest, we will naturally welcome you with tea, but if you are a malicious guest who wants to steal our treasures, our immeasurable monastery can only sweep you out. Does Mr. Black Dragon want to leave on your own, or do you want us to drive you away?" It had to be said that the black dragon did have the ability to act tough. If an ordinary person were to stand in the rain, they would have long been drenched. How could a drowned rat have any prestige to speak of? The black dragon was different. He had been standing in the rain for a long time, and the rain today was indeed very heavy. The rain was boundless, but not a single drop fell on Black Dragon's clothes. Even now, his body remained dry and clean. He did not move at all, but the black robe on his body fluttered, and a rain of arrows flew out in all directions of the courtyard. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Countless raindrops turned into countless rain arrows, and countless rain arrows flew towards the surrounding Taoist priests. The young Taoist priests retreated nervously. The middle-aged Taoist priest and the old Taoist priest came forward and waved their sleeves. With a flick of their horsetail whisks, they sent the rain arrows flying. "This is to teach you a lesson for not being polite," the Black Dragon said in a gloomy voice. The Black Dragon did not intend to use this move to injure anyone. He only wanted to create some chaos in the crowd. Taichung and a few older Taoist priests stood there expressionlessly. When the rain arrows flew in front of them, they automatically bounced off, as though they had encountered an invisible wall. Even the young Taoist priest standing behind them would not be harmed in any way. After the Black Dragon was done teaching the young one a lesson, his gaze shifted to the old one. He looked at the old Taoist priest Taichung and said, "Taichung, I'm here for the Taiji painting. Give me the Taiji painting and I will naturally leave. The Taiji painting already has a successor. It will be sent out on a chosen day. Naturally, I can't give it to you," said the old Taoist priest Taichung indifferently. "Who can obtain this Taiji painting?" asked the Black Dragon in surprise. "Naturally, it's a fated person." "A fated person?" The Black Dragon sneered. "You monks and Taoist priests just like to play tricks. What do you mean by fated people? Those who have a close relationship with you are fated people. It's fine if those vulgar people in the outside world like to play tricks behind the scenes, but even you monks and Taoist priests like to play such tricks. Don't you have any shame? You keep saying that you believe in gods, but if there really is a god, the first thing they will punish would be believers like you who are duplicitous and use their name to cheat." "Heavenly Lord of the Immeasurable," Taichung chanted and said, "it looks like this old Taoist will have to do something today. To be able to fight with old Taoist Taichung, it's not a wasted trip." As the Black Dragon spoke, his body vanished into thin air. When he appeared again, he had already leaped in front of the old Taoist priest Taichung, appearing and disappearing like a ghost. It was not the Black Dragon's usual movements, but the ultimate technique that the Black Dragon was currently using. This ultimate technique was called appearing and disappearing like a ghost. Apart from a very small number of experts in the world, very few people could track his movements. Just like his nickname, Black Dragon, he was hidden in the darkness, and all one could see was nothingness. The Black Dragon was currently in a state of nothingness, and his body had turned into a blurry figure. It was just like the name of a very popular television series a few years ago, like Fog, Rain, and Wind. He struck out with his palm, and the palm that he struck out also turned illusory. It was not a shadow, but a palm formation formed by countless palm shadows. With just a light palm strike, the Black Dragon locked onto the old Taoist priest Taichung's chi activity. Like an invisible electric net, it trapped his hands, his feet, and every part of his body that could attack. When experts exchanged blows, the first thing they competed on was chi activity. The Black Dragon's chi activity was powerful, and he had struck first. It looked like he had already gained the upper hand. Just as the illusory palm prints were about to strike the old Taoist priest Taichung's chest, the old Taoist priest's body disappeared. No, he did not disappear. He just suddenly disappeared right under people's noses, and then reappeared even more suddenly. It was as if he had used the invisibility technique once, and then instantly lost its effect. Then, Black Dragon's charging body was sent flying backwards. Whoosh! His black robe fluttered in the wind. Crack! The Black Dragon's feet stood on the large vat in the courtyard, and he broke a small corner of the vat. Then, he looked in Taichung's direction in surprise. Final radiance of the setting sun, rebirth after death. The black dragon chuckled. Interesting. In the large vat behind him, two big fish, one black and one white, poked their heads out. The wedding date for Yi Fengsheng and Bailey Qingzhu had been roughly set. Because they already had a child in their wombs, many things had to be simplified and done quickly. They had to get married within a month. After all, they could not let the girl's belly grow big, or the news spread before they got married. If that happened, it would not look good on both sides. Fang Yen was originally going to return to Huacheng in the next few days. There were still a lot of things to take care of there. But now, it was very difficult for him to leave. On one hand, he had promised Zhang Jianjun that he would complete a mission for the country. He was duty-bound to help the country. Moreover, Swallow Dock had been doing this all these years. Some obtained merit, and some were buried in the earth. But, no one had ever retreated. In addition, he wanted to wait until his good brother Yi Fengsheng got married before returning. Yi Fengsheng was the first to get married among his group of brothers, and he might be the first to become a father. Of course, he could not rule out the possibility that some of these fellows had illegitimate children that could already be used as soy sauce. Yi Fengsheng spread the news that Zhu Zaidan, who was far away in the North Sea, was also said to be coming back. At that time, his group of brothers could have a good reunion. Most importantly, Fang Yen could not bear to go back. During the days he was in Swallow Dock, he accompanied his mother to the mausoleum in the back mountain every morning to sweep his father's grave. He would pour a cup of wine for him, light a stick of incense, and then help his mother tidy up her vegetable garden. In the afternoon, he would chat with his grandfather, and push his wheelchair and the Vajra eagle around Shihizi. The rest of the time was used to accompany Yi Ro, walking with her, eating with her, watching the sunrise with her, and watching the sunset with her. Because Yi Ro was seriously injured while climbing the Heaven's Path, she still could not practice martial arts. Therefore, Fang Yen took her around all day, and the Yi family did not say anything. Yi Daowen seemed to have forgotten the unpleasant conversation with his daughter, and turned a deaf ear to her disobedient behavior. It was as if it had never happened. Yi Ro and Yi Ro made a bet because of Fang Yen. Although Yi Ro won the bet, she still promised to take a day to go shopping with Yi Ro, although she did not know what to do. Hearing that Yi Ro and Yi Ro were going shopping in Yanjing City, Fang Yen volunteered to take the responsibility of driving them. Now, he followed behind the two women, carrying big and small bags in his hands, but what he got was all kinds of dissatisfaction from Yi Ro. "Sister, we are going shopping, why do we need to bring a third wheel? I was going to take you to see a handsome guy." Yi Ro complained, but she pulled Yi Ro into one brand store after another to try on clothes and shoes. "You can also go to see handsome guys now. After seeing them, you will find that a man with inner qualities like me is really rare." Fang Yen said with a smile, and kept making eyes at Yi Ro along the way. When he was in Swallow Dock, he always had the feeling that he was being watched. He couldn't do anything intimate with Yi Ro. After coming out, the sky was high and the sea was wide, and it was easy to do something overboard. Fang Yen was even thinking of not going back tonight. He was going to find a hotel and get a room. But, what about Yi Ro? This third wheel is really annoying. You're tuning into the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.